All right, it is 6:30 on August 20th. We have a full dais. I am calling this meeting to order August 20th at 6:30. I'm going to go ahead and skip down to citizens' comments, item number 3. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone signed up to speak for citizen comments? No, we do not, so we have taken care of that item. I will move us back up to the work session item number 2A, receive questions from council regarding fiscal year 2020 budget and city manager's budget overview that was presented at the August 13th city council meeting. City manager and staff, we appreciate the time that you guys took on August 13th to give us all of the information. Council, you have, each of us have had our books updated. There's been a limited number of changes made, and thank you very much, Ms. Waldron, for the summary of the changes, and so we all have the appropriate pages for that. I had one council member specifically say that they wanted an opportunity to just ask some questions and have an exchange. So I'm going to let that council member go first, but I think Ms. Waldron was surprised to see many of us have lots of stickies and notes. I know for myself, sometimes the first time through I've had a question and then I find it on a different page, so I go back. But so I don't think anybody should freak out with the number of tabs that we all have, but I do think there's just kind of some general questions. Clearly, staff has spent a lot longer with the document than we have, and it is an awful lot to take in one fell swoop. So, Councilmember Ennis, you want to kick us off tonight? And I am hoping that council will, it is really difficult to keep track of who is ready to say something, and we don't have the lights like we do when we are on the dais, so I would ask us to not speak over each other, but please don't wait to be recognized. The point of it is to be a workshop, and if somebody asks a question that reminds you of the question that you want to ask, let's make sure that this is real free-flowing. We're trying to make sure that we get all of the basic information that we need because we've got some important votes coming up. So, Councilmember Ennis, do you have a question you'd like to kick off?
First question I have.
And I need you to find a microphone.
First question I'd like to have clarified, and it may be, I may have overlooked it, but on this first page we asked you when we made the presentation last week. We have 307,781. Does that include the 124,315? It does. So you can subtract that, and that 170.
It's 183,466.
183 what?
466 from existing landowners from the prior year.
I think that's important for folks at home to know that when they think about their taxes going up, that it only raises $183,466 when we start talking about some of the outlays we have for fire equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, sir. And I also think it's important to note that Senate Bill 2, because of our population, allows us to go to 500,000. And that would be without new property. So that, exactly to your point, the Senate Bill 2 that was approved, the 183,466 could be as high as 500,000, and it would not require a vote by the electorate. That's the way the rules written. That's the way the law is written.
Another question I have is when we swept the salaries, 172,000. We have that last year. We budgeted savings of that amount, so we were expecting to sweep that, right? Okay. And it says we've zeroed out all salary savings. What happens to that?
It was reallocated to other items. I know I brought a budget amendment earlier in the couple of months ago, which reallocated that to cover other expenses and then put the difference in contingency.
Is that your question? Is it what happened to it last year or what happened to it this year?
Well, I thought we just recently did that. Swept that 172.
She did it throughout the year as it became available to meet the expected budget amount that we went into the budget knowing we needed to meet.
Okay.
So as a vacancy occurred on a monthly basis, she would sweep that from whatever budget had the vacancy and put it in organizational to meet the offset in the budget.
I guess I understand.
So essentially what happens is that rather than budgeting at 100% of salaries, we took 100% of the salaries and then reduced it by the $172,000 in savings. This year, there is no savings. Everything is budgeted at 100% because all of our positions will be full.
Okay. So we plugged that into areas where we went over budget or had unexpected expenditures or what?
So the way salary savings works, we had a number of new positions we knew would take time to fill. And rather than putting that money in the budget and not using it, we offset it so that we could take that $172,000 and spend it on one-time things we otherwise would not have done.
So bottom line, you're talking about a placeholder in salary, fully expecting to sweep and use it in something.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That y'all
I got
approved
it.
in the budget.
I got it. Okay.
So it was an accounting calculation last year because we had savings. This year we know we're not going to have savings. So everything is budgeted at 100% and there is no salary savings. So that was something we did last year because of the timing of the positions, but this year that's not the case, so isn't something that would be a useful tool to us. But think of it as $172,000 worth of authorized programs and services that y'all approved that had we not done it, we wouldn't have had.
Okay. Thank you.
Along those same lines, to stick with that subject, then tell me how, because you said that you were freezing some positions, how does that work in the calculation?
So this year, the two positions that are frozen, we just didn't put any salary money in them.
So there's zero money in the budget
Yes,
for those
ma'am.
two positions?
So they're still on the authorized position list, but we didn't put any money with them, hence why they're frozen. So
Okay.
there won't be
I didn't
any-
know if that was like a placeholder that, but I just wanted to make sure, because when you said frozen and we've got everybody 100%, I was just trying to make sure I
Yes,
knew
ma'am.
how you were accounting
That
for
is a great clarifier. So we budgeted all of the funded positions 100%. There are two positions in the budget that I didn't eliminate the position, but I did not fund them. And part of that is because, as I have said in the budget memo, with the change in the legislature, the impact that no annexation in our future looks like, we need time to make some strategic decisions going forward. And I don't know whether or not those long-term are positions we need to fund or not, because I don't have enough time. As I told y'all, we're in 6 weeks, got to make a lot of decisions. They're vacant. So at this point in time, we're going to continue this next year until we can have some thoughtful, strategic conversations and regroup. If we don't need them, we'll eliminate them. If we need them, then we'll fund them. But that's why they're frozen this year.
Another question that I had was in the commentary, it said that we had some expenses related to the Ramos restaurant. Was that the fencing, or was just additional time, staff time? Or?
There was a process that had to be followed, so included in that was some unforeseen attorney expenses because we needed Alan involved in that. The fencing was something because of the fall zone. We have a responsibility to protect the public, and the probably most significant piece of that was in order for us to take the action that we did, we had to deem it dangerous. And so we had to pay a structural engineer to inspect it and write a report that they were willing to stamp that say that there was a reason for public concern. And we had Kimley Horn do that. So those were the expenses that were unforeseen that we had to do to protect the public in that moment.
I just know that so often those of us our citizens as well as those of us on council look at that and go, we just tag them and put a fence up and wait for them to do what they're supposed to do, and it's a lot more complicated than that. That's
Yes.
why I was wondering. Okay. I don't want to do this all by myself now.
That's fair.
On the salary increases for this year, the 820K, there's 445,000 in salary savings from 2019. Was that rolled over into 2020?
Nothing was rolled over. The difference, the 800 is the difference between the projected and the new budget. The 400 was the difference between the budget and the budget, fiscal 19 to fiscal 2020.
Okay, let me rephrase that. $444,000 in salary savings from 2019. Where did that money go?
I mean, it does end up in the fund balance number at the end of the year. We
Okay.
didn't take that amount and reappropriate it into 2020.
I don't follow your question. Please try again.
Okay, in 2019, there was $445,342 in salary savings. That's first part. Second part is this year is an increase of $820,206 in salary. Does that $802,000 include the $445,000 that we realized in savings from last year?
Yes, because we have to fully fund that to get back to being net neutral. Yes.
That's what I was making sure that was the case. Explain to me the difference, or not to me, because I know, but for our listening audience, the difference between the step increase and the COLA increase.
So the city has an improved compensation plan that is built, first of all, with classifications. And each classification then has steps. And Tanya, nod or shake your head. There are 16 steps in each classification. She's nodding yes, so I have that correct. So in order to progress in the compensation plan, the 2.5% step means you get to move to your next step. The COLA actually adjusts the classification plan against the market. So what would happen is that the beginning salary of that classification would move 2.5%. The end would move 2.5% when we give you the 2% COLA, so that you move in the plan and you get to the next step. So it keeps you relevant in your classification by steps, and then it keeps the classification plan relevant in the market, so that we don't lag behind and have to spend an extraordinary amount of money because we've fallen out of the market. And this is the first year, I believe, in 5 years that we've not funded both the step and the COLA. And the reason we didn't fund the COLA is the same reason I didn't fund those two positions. We are in a period of transition, trying to just hold our own until we can make better decisions when we understand the full impact of what's going on. So when we internally discussed it, it seems more equitable to our employees to continue to allow them to move stepwise within their classification plan, and we will adjust COLA in the future.
Council, I would like to make one request, that when you start talking about stuff, that you might maybe say what page you're on. I think that would be, they may already know the pages, but I think that would be helpful for us. So go ahead, Councilman Rogers.
I was just making to understand what Lyle said, because I don't know all those terms you just talked about. But so everyone will get that step unless they're, is that correct?
So,
in a certain field and
so everybody gets a step unless they are topped out. And we do have employees that have been here a long time that are topped out. And what happens is instead of them moving in a step, they get a lump sum payment. And so their salary doesn't change, but they get a one-time payment that's equivalent to that step. So that rewards them for longevity and being a good employee, but by not giving them a step that they make, it doesn't inflate the market, and make that job worth more than the market considers it being worth. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, but it's not, so it, I know you kind of explained this to me when I asked you on the phone. I just wanted to, make sure I understand. But, so it won't matter, it's not done on job performance, per se.
So in order for everybody to get an increase, they are evaluated. I would tell you 98% of the time, our employees get that with no problem. But we do have an occasional employee that if they are under a performance improvement plan, there may be a delay in them getting that step until they successfully complete that performance improvement.
Thank you. You had explained it to me. I just wanted to make sure I could explain it again. Yes, ma'am.
I was under the impression that step increases would be time and service. Is that correct or not correct?
Step increases happen on their anniversary, but the evaluation happens in context with their evaluation on their anniversary. And that way, what we're not doing is 143 employees all at one time. So that allows the evaluations to happen throughout the year so that supervisors can appropriately evaluate employees instead of trying to do 10 at one time to check a box.
So with that, just for clarification for me, the step is included in the merit, or am I getting merit mixed up with, is there merit as well as step, or are the steps really the merit?
So I don't like merit.
Okay.
So our compensation plan calls them steps. And so essentially what happens is you got a beginning and an end, and you take the difference and divide it by 14 steps, and there's about 2.5% between the steps. So on your anniversary date, you are eligible for a step increase tied to your evaluation. If we were going to give cost of living increases, everybody gets those at the same time, and they're typically October 1st.
Okay, so there's not merit, but there's steps, and that's basically is a merit type situation, but it's on anniversary date and it's based upon the evaluation.
Okay.
Is that, I mean...
I'm not intending to be difficult, but I don't like the word merit.
Right.
We have a compensation plan based on steps. So we give steps. Now, I don't know how that would equate in your past with compensation plans you've worked under that might have been merit-based. But this one is based on steps that are tied to your anniversary, and there is an evaluation that occurs, and if you are performing, then you get that step. From a philosophical standpoint, and all of my cabinet will agree with you, the first time I have an employee that's not performing well, they need to know about it before their performance evaluation. We have done them a distinct disservice. So my expectation is that we deal with performance 365 days a year, and when we get to a step with their performance, they should not read anything in that performance evaluation that surprises them.
Okay. I guess not necessarily with the city, but with other positions at other places I've worked or whatever, there's been, I guess there's been steps as well as merit, because sometimes we do have people that outperform their step situation, and there are sometimes needs for an increase or bump in addition to that because of their beyond performance
and
standards.
that is taken care of outside of the compensation plan that we do based on a set of circumstances that is evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Where would that money come from?
If there is salary savings, it would come from that, and it just depends on what the situation is.
Are you talking about a bonus?
No, it might be a reclassification. It could be because we have somebody that has picked up some additional duties, and the compensation plan has the ability to reevaluate that position so that they are not inadvertently penalized for being good about stepping up. So if we have an employee that has assumed some additional duties or something like that, the plan allows the HR director to do a job performance review, and then there is a point system that establishes the classification, and that may cause that job to be reclassified in the system. And then our personnel policy has some parameters on which we would manage the adjustment based on what caused it to happen.
Thank you. I'm going to make a paradigm leap here now. On page 10.
Wait. Hang on. While we're still on
Okay.
the subject, so that's kind of a, and I'm sure you've heard that, that's sort of a peanut butter approach, right?
No, ma'am.
Well, everybody's getting 2.5% on their anniversary if they've performed their job. That's what I heard you say.
That is the way the system is built and has been for years.
Okay.
If you choose to do different, that is a big deal, because that is a wholesale difference in philosophy. It's a wholesale difference in how a classification process is built, structured, engaged in the market.
Okay. So my question is, and I'll use like Public Works. I'm a Public Works Tech 1. Do I come in? I hear and I fully understand the market. There's a value to, if I have this set of skills in this market, in this region, I can expect to pay between, and I'm just going to make up $10 to $20.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I should use $10 to $24 because there's 14 steps. Do they hire in at step 1? Where do they hire in at?
So nothing about classification is scientific. It's artistic. And there will be a lot of factors. And one of the factors could be, is there a premium for that job? So right now, you can't hire building inspectors in the state of Texas. There aren't enough of them. So if you get one, you've paid a premium for it. Sometimes we have positions that are, you get a gazillion applications for it. So typically they would start at the beginning of the range.
Okay.
You might get somebody, and I will give you a great example because we spent 2 years looking for the building official. So in that situation, we posted a job description that had a large range pay and essentially said the more skills you have, the higher we'll pay. And so it is not, that's the art in it. We have to look at who we're competing against. In fact, Judge Poppy and I can't even remember, it was early in my career, but the county was hiring the same position we were. And so we paid more than he did, and it irritated him, but we were competing, and I knew that if we paid less, they'd go to the county and they wouldn't be here long. So we pay to train, and then somebody else benefits from it. So you can pay now or pay later. And I learned a long time ago that when you pay somebody to train, you need to keep them because that institutional knowledge has real value. So that's the art form in compensation. There is no...
And then the steps are reevaluated, and that's one of the things that Ms. Crantrell does is make sure that you're staying market relevant.
Yes, ma'am, because the thing that I appreciate about you as a body and your funding of our compensation plan is that we're competitive. There are positions in our area that have not stayed competitive. And every time there is a job opening in Williamson County, they go. And it has a significant impact on us and some of the services that we count on. So I appreciate the fact that y'all appreciate our employees and what they do, and you make sure that we are appropriately compensated so that I'm not ever trying to catch up and make apologies for service. We get folks that are well qualified, excited about being here, know that they matter, know that they're valued, and they want to stay. And that, at the end of the day, is the culture we all are striving for.
I am completely supportive of that because back in the merit world, there tends to be a forced bell curve, and
You get rewarded for breathing, and
Yes.
that's not what the citizens want to pay for.
yeah, okay, all right. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, I just wanted to finish that subject. Yeah, there you go.
On page 10, full-time construction manager. My question was, it says whether it is a new construction, whether it is a city project or a public improvement project. I took that to mean that individual construction is in that mix as well.
So that is using vernacular in anticipation of our new code. And we are defining the building Bastrop block between the public realm and the private realm. So any infrastructure that will be built in the public, water, wastewater, streets, drainage, this position would inspect to ensure that it is being constructed as designed and will last its useful life. So when the city accepts it, we can be assured that we've gotten it was built at a standard that we want to maintain.
I got that part of it. What I'm wondering is, if I add a big old expansion to my house,
The construction manager will not be who inspects it. That's the building inspector.
okay,
This,
that was the distinction I was looking for.
okay.
Thank you.
And that PIP is the 11 or 18-page document.
Yes, that y'all are adopting
Yes.
Tuesday night that we currently don't have. And that is the public improvement plan element that we talked about last Tuesday. It's just what we're going to call construction plans for subdivisions and infrastructure.
Great.
In that same area, I'm concerned that the 2.1 FTE positions for the fire department, are those enough to fulfill the around-the-clock watch that we're wanting to implement? I mean, that's only a little over 4,000 hours, and I just...
Yes, so that is taking, well, we'll talk about that in our presentation, but it's taking, adding additional part-time shift, and then we're going to do some tweaking with our current shift that we have to make 24-hour coverage, to give us 2 persons 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
But from a life safety perspective, I want to make sure that we're putting enough in there for you to accomplish what you're wanting to accomplish, and that's why I'm asking.
He would
the
not
question.
turn down an extra person if we
Absolutely,
could
yeah.
find the money.
If we want to...
Within reason, sir.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And if we want, I'm always open to more. This was what we allocated in the budget this year but we will definitely be bringing them back, coming back for more or for a full-time component down the road. So.
Okay.
Because you've asked, I'm going to talk about the unwritten asterisk that goes on the 2.1. Part of the challenge that we have is the 2.1 full-time equivalent represents a pool of hours. And the challenge that Andreas has is that we are limited by state law as to what constitutes part-time. And so he gets somebody that's really good. When they reach that limit, I got to go. And so he's constantly going through really good folks that really want to be here, but when they reach that part-time limit, we can't keep them. So that's the challenge that he has right now. And so part of what we'll be coming back and part of the journey we have to take this next year is what is the right long-term answer for the fire department. And so what we will tell you is today this is an interim solution because this will get him two part-time people in 12-hour shifts, 24/7, 365. And we know that is a bridge, and we're going to have to move toward a more full-time component with firemen. But that's permanent and expensive. So part of what Chief Altgeld and Chief Rosales are going to be doing this next year is to put together a long-term plan for the fire department that will look not only at equipment, but personnel, locations of fire stations, those kinds of things. And you can fully anticipate that this time next year we'll still be talking about fire.
Just a quick question on that. You were saying part-time, I guess in the past, I've called it temporary or permanent positions, and you were saying reach the part-time maximum, so it's the amount, is it the maximum amount of hours that a part-time person can
It's
work?
1,000 hours. So when that person, because what happens is that when the chief sets the schedule, we open up the hours, and all of these folks have full-time jobs somewhere else. And so based on their schedule, they agree to work here. And some of them might pull 2 or 3 shifts, and some can only do 1 or 2 shifts a month. And so each one of them then has to be tracked based on 1,000-hour allocation. And when they reach that, whether it's April, September, or November 30th at 1,000 hours, we can't keep them anymore, because then they start tripping other things that make them permanent part-time, and we then have to start paying benefits, Social Security, FICA, and things at a much higher level that we haven't budgeted for.
Okay, so I guess I was confusing that with temporary seasonal but it's basically the same thing. It's just the terminology, I guess, on my part.
So for purposes of budgeting, a full-time equivalent is 2,080 hours. So he puts together and tells Tanya, I need X number of hours. And we don't worry about how many people it takes to fill those hours. She just converts it. In this instance, it is, he's telling me in fire it's 2,184 hours because of the 24-hour shift. But in that pool, converts it to the full-time equivalent, so it works in Tracy's accounting world, and we can talk apples to apples. But as far as he's concerned, he's just got a pool of hours, and nobody in his pool generates more than 1,000 hours. So it's a complicated way to do business, but it's what we have to do to make it work.
So these 2.1 positions they're receiving pay, but they're not receiving benefits then?
So we are required to pay FICA and the Medicare fee on that, but we do not pay health insurance, nor do we pay TMRS retirement.
Okay, that's what I needed clarification on. Thank you.
Are we going in a certain order or staying on payroll or whichever? Okay, so I have this question, Trey.
Trey's like, man, I'm sitting on this side on a vertebrae.
And I know I brought this up, but now I want to, since the fee is going up, I want to re-ask the question so I can understand better. The service fee is going to go with the water and the wastewater, and we're charging, I understand wastewater is not metered per se, right, but you're sending the bill to that meter, resident meter, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I'm wondering, understand the situation I'm going to talk to you about, is there's a building and they have 1 meter, why are they paying, each one of them paying a service fee when it's 1 meter?
It's a TCEQ requirement for tap fees, and that's what Chris indicated.
But there's only 1 tap.
She's talking about being connected to the system. So if you're connected to the system per our ordinance, you're required to pay a fee, a minimum fee for, even if there's 1 connection and 10 people use that 1 connection, they are all getting service on our system. Therefore, deliver an SUE into our system, and you have to pay for that service.
And it's what?
Okay. So, okay, I don't.
You're talking about a multi-tenant building, so a shell building with multiple tenants.
Well, I know that this is going to be addressed when we bring back the changes. We haven't brought back the changes for the ordinance. Those will come back in October along with the fees that will be effective January 1st. But it's clear with the TCQ rules that it's a multi-unit. So even though there's 1 meter coming into the building, there's bathrooms in each one of those units. So it gets calculated based on a multi-unit. Just like for the apartments, it's multi-family. So 1 meter comes into that apartment building, but all of those apartments get a base fee calculated for them.
The same
Because-
base fee?
No, different for the multi-units on the commercial side.
The TCEQ views a unit as a tap, and that's what Chris explained when we talked about this back in February.
Okay, so my question being is that, okay, so this service fees are, so when they have multi, then that fee is calculated differently,
The base fee is the same for each unit.
but it's not the same as one house. Is that what you're saying?
Now she's asking about the rate.
Right, the base fee rate.
The base
for-
fee rate for
this-
residential is it the same rate, base fee rate for
I
multifamily?
believe for sewer, you're talking about sewer?
Either
Or
one of them,
water.
it's still a base fee, it doesn't matter.
I believe the base fee is the same, yes.
It's 5,000 gallons.
Well, it's the flat fee, it's our base fee. So our base fee is going up $5. Each unit gets charged the base fee.
And I think it's based on 0 to 5,000 gallons. It's built into the base fee.
Okay, so now I have another question on how you guys calculate that policy.
No? Okay.
Wait, back up. So
We don't have any units built into the base fee. It covers customer service and debt service.
Okay,
Part of your rate, right?
gotcha.
Okay, so let's just, another example, so, all right, so I'm gonna use your new home, right? You have, or any home that has a rental house behind it, with an ability to rent another connection, all out of that same meter, they're gonna now get charged for two.
Because there's 2 units, yes.
If there's a separate account, absolutely.
Okay,
No,
but
It's
no,
not
not
a
the same
separate
account.
account. The
It's the same
TCEQ
account.
doesn't look at separate accounts. They look at units, which is why the multifamily is now going to have the fees associated based on units, not meters. And that's what Chris said was our challenge, is we were only charging based on meter, and the TCEQ definition is not meter, it's units.
Yes,
But is
which
it
we'll address in
residential
October.
units or commercial units?
There are both. There are multi-units in your commercial side, and there are multifamily in your residential side, but they both get charged the base fee. All of the units get the base fee.
So when we bring this ordinance to you in October, we will make sure Chris is back here to explain this, and we will make sure that in the ordinance, those questions are addressed, so that you can point to and show the citizens. Because my recollection of this when we had a conversation was, and you know Chris, he can quote the TCEQ rules, and boy, he pulled it out. No, it's this, and it requires this, and this. And so I'm confident when I tell you it is a TCEQ requirement, but we'll get the exact language.
I'm equally confident that we are not, if we look at where we are right now, we have not consistently done it throughout the city. I think that's part of what we have to clean
That
up.
is, and that's why we brought this to you in February, because all over town, there was no rhyme or reason. And what we're doing in October is adopting an ordinance so that everybody is treated the same. Yes, ma'am.
But TCEQ, whoever, they just say you have to charge. They're not the ones that are setting the fee, we are, is that correct?
Correct.
They define what constitutes, I think, the tap or the unit or fee, but what you charge per person is based on your system, its cost and allocation.
Okay. I just wanna
And
make-
what council votes on at the end of the day.
Y'all make those
Set the-
decisions,
set the
that's
rate.
right.
Okay, so then that makes another question, I'm sorry. Okay, so we have this base fee because of we figured out whatever needs to pay for it out of all these connections we have, correct? But if we're not, like the mayor just stated, if we're not truly charging everybody the same, then how do we know exactly,
So,
you see what I'm saying?
So the whole point, and we may bump up when we bring you this ordinance, but we have it calendared for October, but this fee is going to go into effect January 1st, correct?
Yes, and our rate model that we're using to calculate these fees
Actually, I think it goes into effect
has
October.
the structure in there, the way it will be applied if we change the ordinance and apply everything equally. So we're using a rate model that is incorporating how we should be charging all of these. And so
You're using a rate model that has not been adopted by council yet. That you're using what you think
we're
you're-
applying the appropriate TCEQ rules in the rate model, which is where we're getting the calculations for the fees. Yes.
And these fees, water fees go into effect when?
October 1st, it says on page 11.
No, that's solid waste.
No, that's
The water and
solid.
wastewater
It's
don't go into
January
effect
1st.
January
Yeah,
1st.
it's in the appendix.
So we're going to bring you the ordinance that does that in
Ahead of
October.
This is trash. There's too many pages. Y'all have too
Yeah,
many
because they don't
pages.
have double pages. I'm not sure which one. Okay, so that makes more sense. So I just want to make sure everybody was being treated
So
equally, so not one person can't compare the bill to the guy next door and wonder why I'm paying more than the other person. So apparently there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be upset.
it's going to be fun and come October. And I will ask you a question I'm going to ask you in advance of October. And we're going to use Miss Humble as an example. You have a house that has a unit behind it that you could rent if you wanted to. And we've specifically talked about in building Bastrop as a way to have that middle housing. They may already have them. They'll have the ability to build them when we adopt the building Bastrop codes. You have correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you have a single meter and a single water meter and a single wastewater tap into the system. And somewhere in a galaxy far, far away, when those original taps and connections were made, somebody paid an impact fee. The impact fees we're talking about now have nothing to do with your property because you are already connected to the fee. When we talk about it in October, I'm going to be real interested in, will you be charged 2 wastewater base rates, whether or not it's rented? Like how is that going to work? Because God forbid, how would you keep up with whether or not there's someone living and then get into renting in the second
That's one
building?
of our questions that we have on our list to make sure that we address it in our ordinance because we don't want our utility customer service department to be confused how to apply it.
Yes.
We want it to be super clear.
And we don't want to be confused on how to talk to our citizens about it because
That's right.
that's how they're going to set their rent and be able to do their
But I
analysis.
think that Chris is going to say it's a unit. But we'll let him address that, but it's an additional unit, and they can pass that on through their rent for that base fee and the amount of usage that they use.
City Manager, I would think that we might want to workshop on this and probably start that meeting early because I think there's going to be lots of questions.
So here would be what I would say to you. We have just created a fruit bowl. So we were talking about apples and we just added oranges.
Yep.
So accessory dwelling units are not something that we have fully vetted. And we need to have a conversation about accessory dwelling units. Mm-hmm. And then when y'all make some decisions about accessory dwelling units, we can figure out how to apply the applicable fees. But if we start talking about accessory dwelling units as water and wastewater, we'll have missed the conversation.
Agree completely.
So what we need to do is have a conversation about how we're going to manage the addition of new accessory dwelling units as a way to create workforce housing and how we're going to apply all of our services in that context so that we never lose sight of the end game. And then we can amend all of the appropriate ordinances to solve the holistic conversation that you have about that.
And I think in my opinion, those accessory dwelling units need to take into account things that already exist and things that will be built. People need a level playing field.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we need to account for it appropriately when in the model that we're doing for the rates. And I know that's not budget, but I think it ultimately is budget. And I'm really, really glad Councilmember Rogers brought up the question.
I didn't want to bring up the word hotel. Each one of those have a shower and a toilet.
Yeah.
When you start dealing with a hotel, the meter size takes care of that. When you're dealing with residential units and small commercial multifamily, they're 3/4 inch meters. When you start dealing with a hotel, you've got a big meter intended to have big water usage, and the impact fees and the fees associated with those big meters factor all of that in.
Wouldn't that be the same as an apartment complex?
That's what I was going to say.
We will deal with all of that when we bring it back. I'm not Chris, and y'all have gotten off in the minutia, but I hear you, and we will get
Thank
you
you.
some answers.
All right, that's enough questions for you for a minute. Councilmember Jack or Councilmember Peterson,
Let's not talk about water anymore.
please. All right, Councilor, go ahead, Doc.
Okay.
Councilmember
We're-
Jackson.
I'll get out of the weeds and go into the book files, because on page 7, I had some questions, because I've had some residents of the city contact me, and some non-residents as well, about the proposed non-resident library fee. Page 7.
Page 7 of the
Transmittal
transmittal
letter.
memo.
In the very front, my budget memo.
Oh, okay. And that's the proposed fee because of for the FY 2020. I briefly discussed this morning with the city manager and with Ms. Waldron as well, and I just had some concerns and some questions with a little background history. I've been down this road before with previous councils, and we had like a bloodbath over this situation because the citizens came in and were just appalled that we would want to charge this. And I don't know if the numbers were as high then. I know that we did have a large number of non-residents that were using the library. So I looked at the budget and I looked at what we did, and I tried to do some due diligence and tried to work with, I called my commissioner and asked him if there would be any way that we could get some more money from the county because of that. As it so happened, they are having a budget meeting today, and so they were going to address that. I also called the Cedar Creek commissioner to try to find out what was happening. Neither one was aware that this was going on, so they were going to get with the judge and with the auditor, because our city manager has already talked with him about that, but it hadn't been passed on to the commissioners yet. So they did not have time today because of other budget issues that kind of blew up in their face, and they didn't get a chance to get around to that. So, but they were very concerned about the fact that non-residents were going to be charged the fee, and I asked that they try to come up with some type of allocation to help these non-residents. And it's $8,500 is what they, I think, had promised to pay, but then that was, with our budget of $741,267, that's wouldn't, be enough, and with the number of residents and non-residents that we have. So I was looking at the fee of $25, which to a lot of people doesn't seem like a lot of money per, and that's per membership. So I was going to ask, is that going to be is that a family? Is that an individual member, or?
It's a library card, and they're issued to individuals.
Okay, so there won't be any family card. In other words, everyone that uses it, or if it's issued to a member, several members of that family could utilize that card pretty much so then.
Becca, nod at me. Do we issue library cards to individuals? Do we issue library cards to families? Individuals. So the answer would be everybody's expected to have a library card.
Okay, so.
But mom could check out a book for a child, right?
Oh, sure.
Right. My concern was because of the number of students that we have on the free and reduced lunch students program, and several other concerns, and this was a concern several years ago. We have a high percentage of students that $25, I know we made the comparison of paying other fees and other internet services and things like that, but there are a lot of people in our community that don't have that $25, and so I proposed, and I briefly discussed it, we haven't worked it out, some type of system whereas we could provide with our community partners and other people in the community a way of subsidizing these students if we indeed have to do the fees, find a way of helping these students that can't afford to pay these library fees of $25. And so I'm reaching out to the Friends of the Library Board, and several other organizations in the community to try to see if we can get that to work so that we can make it more affordable for them. It was pointed out that there are school libraries, but then I pointed out that the school libraries, of course, close after school, and a lot of these students that are coming in, a large population of our users in the library come after school or on weekends. To add insult to injury to that, it's also the fact that they have no internet connections in rural Bastrop. A lot of them cannot access internet, and they have to come into town, into the library to do that. Being that this is our future, and they're the students, these students will be, working with us hopefully, and they're the future of our community. I just wanted to try to figure out a way to work with them to make sure that we can get that taken care of. I don't know if we're going to be successful with getting other organizations, but I plan to address that, and hopefully I'll get the support of the council and city and manager, etc., to do that. But it's really going to be hard on a lot of these students to use the library, and I don't want to lose any of our library users due to a fee of $25. So, and I know that we need to have the revenue so that we can keep the doors open, pay the bills, and all of that too. But I'm hoping that there's some alternatives that we can work with this on and make this work out. The argument several years ago too was the fact that a lot of these non-residents of the city spend money, and sales tax comes into our coffers because of that. And it may not be as much because of the situation, but it's just some concerns that I had, and I wanted to share that with the mayor and council and with staff also, and see if there were any concerns or any other comments from anyone about that.
Didn't you break that out down here at the bottom, the sales tax per capita? Okay.
That's why I said it's not that much as far as the sales tax. Yes, it has been broken down for us.
Well, since we asked the library, I was wondering, how do they track that? Is it by the library card on how many books you check out, or how do you get your personnel count that you have here?
You can come to the table, but the registered users are based on active library cards.
So it's not actually how many people came through the door to watch a video?
This is registered users that are authorized to check out material and access library materials.
I think that's a really important point, because you don't have to have a library card to walk into the library. So you can read a book without having to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a library card and I haven't been there, so are you counting me? Not that I haven't been there lately. Not that I've never been to the library.
She's saying active, but I'm
Becca,
trying.
come over to where Trey is and take his seat so you can.
I'm trying to address the fact that it's not as though we're going to close the library and people won't have access to it in the afternoon and on weekends. You don't have to have a library card to walk into the building.
Do you have to have a library card to get on the computers to access internet?
You do not. There are, we have guest passes for computer use for people who come in with one-time needs, like I need to print my plane ticket, and we have computer use special, designated cards specifically for computer use. So no, to go to programs, to use the library, to be in the library does not require a card.
So that special card, would that be one of the ones that if you weren't in the city, you'd pay the $25?
To use the computers?
Well, that special computer card you were just saying, would that be whether you're in the city or in the county with the new fee?
It is not included in this specific proposal, those card types that are computer use only. The $25 fee would be for borrowing materials and borrowing electronic materials, which is where we have a lot of usage.
So in other words, if, from what the mayor was saying, and I wanted to clarify this too, if someone came into the library and they wanted to use the computer, or if they wanted to print out some things, as long as they didn't take books or something like that, there wouldn't be a fee?
Well, there's a fee for printing. Yes, it's per page fee of 10 cents a page for black and white printing. But if they needed to come in to use a computer to do homework, as you were saying, after school or on the weekends, they would be able to do that.
They do not have to have a library card to do that.
No.
Right, so everyone pays that 10-cent fee for the copies and everything, whether they're a resident or non-resident. I was just trying to establish the fact that, so, in other words, it's not as big a deal, I guess, than as some of the citizens and some of the other people were thinking it was going to be, that if there's not going to be, only those that would be checking out books.
No, not
Or
books,
digital.
materials.
Materials, excuse me, yes.
Because a big chunk of what we check out is not books.
Right. Their audio and video.
Yes, sir.
And if they're checking out digital, then they are likely to have digital devices and the ability to download that stuff. So it's not the folks that don't have internet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Have we done any benchmarking on this? Cities in the area?
So what Becca did was go out on, the library has a listserv is what it's called. I think that there were a number of people that are wrestling with this same issue. They have done varying degrees of doing this. She found a nationwide survey, and about 48% of the participants had a resident, non-resident fee. It's probably not as prevalent today as it's going to be next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. Because with the cap and our inability to annex, everybody's going to have to now figure out how to have cost recovery. So when she came in, Tracy, Trey, and Becca and I sat down, and this is not out of the ordinary. Now, that's not to say that Elgin, Smithville, Giddings, and Lockhart do it. But are there people in Central Texas that do this? Yes, sir. It's just not everybody does it, but again, as not everybody is blessed to have the quality of the library, quite frankly, that we do. We've got an amazing building, and we got a stout budget. I came from a city much bigger than this that had a library budget not much bigger than this, so we're very blessed at the resources that we have available to us.
I'd also like to point out, since I am the liaison to the library board, that I discussed this at our August library board meeting, and the library board did not have an issue, and in fact said that they totally understand. They are fully aware that the library runs at a tremendous deficit, and the $8,500 comes nowhere close to how far we're running in the red. And the $25 for a card seemed reasonable. And what their concern is they would hope that council would not expect them to run in the black. There is a quality of life and to your point, a commitment to the community that people have access to the library, and so. When I spoke with them about it in early August, knowing that this was potentially coming, they were fine with it.
Right. Well, I didn't talk to the whole library board. I did speak with some of them, and they mentioned that you had spoken to them about it, and I think they were a little blindsided by it, but they didn't seem, and they may not have said anything at the meeting, but anyway, they were wondering about that, and they seem to want to come up with another solution as well, but that's something that I guess we'll find out more about later on as this develops.
So when you spoke with the two commissioners, do they think they'll come anywhere close to $75,000?
No. But they are looking at some other ways of funding citizens from their precincts. If they can't do anything else, they'll try to figure out something. Since we aren't going to accept the $8,500, maybe there's a way of taking that funding and using it to pay for some of the students that might need it. But in light of the conversation tonight, the fact that they may not need the cards, that's a whole different ball of wax, and so that really kind of changes the whole situation a little bit.
Becca, why don't you explain that we aren't allowed to take the money and charge fees?
It's in the Texas Administrative Code that to be accredited by the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, we can't accept money from any governing entity and then charge a fee to the citizens of that entity. There's nothing that says that entity has to fund
Pay
us at
their
the
fair
same
share.
rate as the number of people that reside in that entity, but it just says we can't do both.
Right, I was aware of that code. I was just trying to figure out if we're not going to be able to take that 8,500, and the commissioners were concerned about, well, if you're not going to take the 8,500, will we legally be able to use that 8,500 to give money to the residents or non-city residents to pay for memberships? But as I
The
said,
answer is no. I think that's what you're saying. The answer is no.
well, this is for,
They can do it.
they can
They can do it. Okay.
right, that's what
We
I'm
can't do
saying.
it
We
for them.
can't do
Yes.
it. That's, I
Okay.
mean, that's,
Gotcha.
And nor should we put an extra burden of our our city staff that's
No.
being paid to try to keep track
I'm
of
not
that.
asking for that. I'm just saying, trying to put it on the county so that they can take, take ownership of some of this burden that's been created for the city itself. And I'd like for them to step up to the plate and help out in that sense, and hopefully we'll get some relief. They're just trying to, the two commissioners I talked to were just trying to figure out a way of taking the money if it's not going to be acceptable to us, if we can't accept it, which is the law, which is the standards, how they can maybe utilize the funding to help those people that do need the library cards. And so, but as I said, in light of all of that, with our discussion tonight, it's not going to be a big deal, I don't think, anymore. So I think that this is going to work out fine.
I would love for somebody to come up with better ideas, but the fact is we have a $771,000 library, or $741,000 library budget that we're either going to have to find ways to fund it, or we're going to have to cut services at some point in time. And I think we just need to be realistic. I would love for somebody to come up with other ideas on how we can fund our library and access services. All city employees are city citizens or citizens of the county, but not all county citizens or citizens of the city. And if the county is going to utilize our library, then perhaps they should enter into some sort of partnership with us to help us fund this. We do have a vibrant library, and I'd like to see it maintained, but if we can't pay for it, we can't maintain it.
I agree 100%, and that's why I'm trying to look at alternatives to make sure that we can support the library and continue the services, and yet help these other non-residents of the city to get some of the services too. And so I'm trying to shift that burden from the city to other organizations that are county-oriented to make sure that the services are still rendered.
So, but tonight, what we're talking about is the city budget. So I guess the thing that we need to have a conversation about is, and we're not voting tonight, but this is $75,000, which is not even 10% of the cost of running the library. Right. So if we don't do the library cards, we got to cut $75,000 somewhere else. I don't vote. I am personally not going to help you find $75,000 somewhere else. I think the $25 fee for non-residents is a reasonable approach, but it is only fair to staff if they know either Becca has to lay somebody off, stop programs, we're going to find it somewhere else. If we are in, we need to give a general idea if we are in agreement with a $25 non-city fee and the $15 6 month. And I don't care who goes first, but we need to kind of give them a feel for where we are.
I do agree with the fees that stated, with the $25 for annual and $15 for 6 months, because I'll probably get some phone calls on this, but 10 cents a page for printing. Has anyone looked at the cost of ink lately? It's hard to keep up with stuff like that if you got your rates so low. We have to move forward to keep that place open.
So you're not only in support of the 25 and 15, you're suggesting that perhaps the library take a look and make sure 10 cents is, that fee may need to go up as well.
Absolutely.
Mr. Peterson, finding you money. We can just go around, or whoever wants to comment.
I understand Councilman Jackson's concern, and it is a valid concern. However, under the light that it doesn't close off services to anybody, I'm supportive of the fee too, and I endorse Councilman Peterson's recommendation.
Ditto.
Okay. Is there anything else on that? I feel like Councilmember Peterson's going to say, let's stop talking about the library. Are you ready to move on? All right.
I just want to, address the concerns that I had, and I appreciate you listening.
I have a question. What, on page 14?
The first 14 or the second 14? Are you in the memo?
I don't recognize the new thing it's been put up.
Are you in the memo or are you behind introduction?
Hotel occupancy tax, page 14.
Okay, you're in the memo. Okay.
The contract mowing, what are we putting that under? How do we, I see the explanation. I'm just wondering how we're just calling that a...
It is what it is.
The alternative is to stop mowing.
Because we don't have that money.
Because if we can't find $75,000 for library cards, I'm pretty sure we can't find $157,000.
Councilmember Ennis, we're building a bridge. I'm not sitting here advocating that this is a permanent solution. I am attempting to make lemonade out of 6 weeks of our world has dramatically changed, and we are trying to make the best decision we can until we can do different. And I think it would be extraordinarily unfair and unreasonable to put y'all in a position to make life-altering changes when we don't understand the unintended consequences of it holistically. So all I'm asking for is a year so that we can come back to you in the spring and the summer, fully understanding the choices that the legislature has made on our behalf and what the unintended consequences of all of this looks like, so that we can have some more conversations about fee recovery.
My question was not geared toward, it was not a critical question. What it was a, just making sure, I know how that squirrely, some of the folks can be in Austin about verifying hot funds. We're sure that we can justify.
I think the answer is that if you can make a case for heads and beds, then it becomes a local decision, and we've heard that time and time again. And I would argue all of the phenomenal work that Visit Bastrop is doing, if we don't mow our grass, will be for nothing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, I'm also in the first set. I would like to go to page 16. Trey, it's for you. I love your little picture. And when I look at page 268, I see expenditures are $720,000. I have never priced one of these. How much does your pretty picture cost?
$90,000.
So it's 90 of the 720.
That's
okay,
correct.
And if it's written somewhere, I apologize, but I never could find about what the hot box costs.
Bottom of page 15.
Is it written there and I didn't
in the
read
bottom
it?
paragraph, approximately $90,000 has been allocated to purchase an asphalt recycler known as a hot box, as shown
there you go.
in chart 5.
Okay, 90,000. Thank you.
Which
Yes,
is being
ma'am.
paid out of the 2013 bond.
Okay, so it's fine. Yeah, I need to clean my glasses, clearly. Okay.
I'd like to say that, going to throw this in the middle of the room and let it languish or grow, I don't know which. But there are 2 things on the wish list that I'd like to throw my support behind. Page 12 of the old section. The new permit tracking software for our planning development and the customer relations management system. I think those are real important.
So the plan is y'all well know, until the ship stops moving, we're guessing. What happens is, in preparation of the audit, Tracy closes out what we affectionately call the 13-month, and that happens about November. And when she closes out the 13th month, then we know exactly how much money above the 25% financial reserve is available. And so at that point in time, we will come back and tell you how much money is available, and then we'll have a conversation about these 4 things. And I appreciate your support for those. I could passionately argue all 4 of these because they're critical. But we believe there will be some money. I don't want to sit here and tell you that I think all 4 of these are going to happen because I just don't know. But this is a conversation that's just putting out there, A, we have additional needs not being met. B, we think we have a funding source. And when we have all of the answers, we'll come back and have a public conversation with you, and it will require a budget amendment. So y'all will all be a part of the decision that gets made on what that gets spent for.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
Can we confirm timing on that? Because I know, like, you got to have the 13th month, you got to close, you got to do some things. When would we expect you to talk to us about this?
Either the second meeting in November or the first meeting in December.
Thank you.
Not to counter Mr. Ennis's comment about the bottom 2, the new permit tracking software and customer relations management software, I'm going to, with the onus that we're placing on our planning department and the temporal aspects of that, I'd like to put that at the top priority of those 4 for sure. The customer relation stuff, we can do it with a person in a spreadsheet at some point in time. But if we can find the money to help with that new permit tracking, I would really encourage us to do so. And also possibly look for grant opportunities in that area.
Thank you, sir. And the one thing that I will tell you is these are guesstimates, and between now and when we bring it back, we will have a better understanding of what we're doing and what it's going to cost.
And it seems to me also on that permit tracking software, it would be awesome if that's available when we're adopting building Bastrop, so everything can be from the get-go.
It would be helpful, but I'm not sure that our accounting will be at that point. We need it to be right.
Okay.
I might as well jump in here. With our vehicle replacement deal, I know that you're going to talk about it later on. I want to emphasize or ask this question: are we going to have a preventative maintenance software so we don't have, or preventative maintenance programs so we don't have vehicles that are languishing for 142 days out of the year?
In the fire department, the answer is holistically, yes, sir. And it is included in the price we're bringing you because we too share the misery of your pain.
Because it either through warranty or through an active process with agreements throughout the community, I don't care. I just think we need to have that.
Just in this moment, he'll reiterate it. So the price that he's going to discuss with you, we have bought 10 years worth of preventative maintenance at today's price. We already know that equipment has to be maintained. The ladder on the aerial must be certified. It is a very specialized piece of equipment. All of the oils have to be changed. It has to be maintained. So we have already bought into the cost of this equipment the preventative maintenance, because y'all have impressed upon us since you've been elected that whatever we do, we have to make sure that it lasts over the life of the asset. And the only way that happens is with preventative maintenance. And knowing that we've got some challenges in our future, that's not where we want to cut. So we'll wrap it into the cost, and that way I can be assured that 10 years from now, whether I'm your city manager or not, that aerial ladder will perform as designed because it's still the manufacturer's problem.
Well, on to that same thing, we have that maintenance plan for any of our vehicles in all of our departments? All of them?
The answer to that would be no, but in the future, as we buy them, we will. The ones that we are buying now, we buy with the 5-year extended warranty, so that they are covered. Not all of our equipment requires the level of preventative maintenance that his fire equipment does. Because it's a pumper and it performs in a fire, it has to be pressure tested. So there's a lot of intricacies that make that equipment expensive and has to perform.
I didn't actually mean that by an extended warranty, but let's say that all of our public works trucks all get their oil changed on them.
Oh, yes.
That's what I was
yes.
asking. Just regular
Yes.
maintenance with somebody
Yes.
making sure that everything's
Yes,
taken
ma'am.
care of. That's all I was asking.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And a lot of new vehicles and things like that from the manufacturers now, they've upped their warranty practice too. I mean, I don't know if it's on city vehicles necessarily, but I know a lot of the new purchases now have longer warranty periods and maintenance plans that are tied in. It's according, I don't know if that's with the state budgets or the state contracts or not, but I know individual dealers have that they've worked out.
Regardless of what warranty, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I applaud your staff's spreading the website costs throughout the different departments. Very, very well done.
Regardless of the warranties and extended warranties that are out there, it's a matter of philosophy. I want to make sure that we're adopting the philosophy of preventative maintenance with all of our vehicles, whether it be at the fire department, the police department, public works, or custodial services. It's a matter of philosophy for us to get the optimal life out of those pieces of equipment.
Yes, sir, and I think Cabinet appreciates better than anybody our challenge in the future, and as my mother used to say, you got to take care of what you got before you get new stuff. So we're going to take real good care of what we got, because there's no guarantee there's new stuff in our future.
Okay, I have a super easy question. On page 9, table of contents behind the introduction, where did film and broadcasting go? Last year we had film and broadcasting under general fund, and then it had $100,000 in hot funds, and now it doesn't show up on the list at all.
The only reason it was listed in general fund last year is because it had an actual carryover from the year before. It's been moved to the hot funds. So it operates with...
Is it in multimedia, or where is it in hot funds?
No, it is in the hot fund. So if you go to the hot fund summary, you'll see all of those divisions listed out. Multimedia, yes, multimedia and film and broadcasting are the same thing.
Okay, that's what I was
Yes,
asking
yes,
you. I was
didn't
like,
catch
she's
that.
tricking me because
No,
it's
yeah,
not
I did.
listed there.
I
Okay.
was just seeing if you were paying attention.
There you go. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
So I have a question in your goal review for 2019. It might just be my question. Oh, it doesn't have a question. 33. It says we acquired the easements. We haven't acquired all the easements for Main Street, right? We just acquired some more.
I am anticipating that by September 30th we do that. If that has not occurred, then I will amend this in the final budget. But Rebecca is well on her way to executing those agreements, and I am subliminally putting that out in the universe that come September 30th, she will achieve that. But if it is not the case, and I have to tell the mayor that we will not be awarding bids on January 2nd of 2020, then I will take that out of the achievements.
I just didn't want to read it positively and it not be true or something.
No,
She was having a party that we had them all done.
yeah, no. Rebecca is working on that and doing a really good job of acquiring those, and she will be providing an update to you next Tuesday on August 27th. So
The second one was the design of the retention pond at the Public Works. Is that design? I know the design was submitted. Has it been approved yet?
So we had one of the most painful pre-construction meetings known to man on Friday. So when you get grant funding from FEMA, there's a lot of box checking. And so the state has their compliance officer, and we have our compliance officer because it's FEMA money and you do box checking. And so we had the rules read to us so we could check that box. And so that was on Jasper Newton. And so we've waited 3.5, almost 4 years for Jasper Newton. So we're now authorized for construction. We were told in that meeting that Pine Street channel improvement has left FEMA and is now in the TDM system to work through their process so that we can be authorized for construction. And hopefully in the next 90 to 120 days, we'll have another painful pre-construction meeting to kick that project off. The one that they could not give us a time frame on is the detention pond. It is still at FEMA and has not made it farther enough in their system for it to be flagged anywhere. But there is no reason to believe that sometime this next year, all of that won't move out of authorization and allow us to start construction.
Okay, but it is designed.
Oh, yeah, all three of them are designed.
That's what I thought.
It's under review.
but you have to submit the design to be reviewed in order for them to fund the construction, and that's where we are.
Right, I knew design was in review, I was just curious if we'd heard anything, but.
No, ma'am.
You answered-
We've kicked off Jasper Newton. We hope to hear from Pine Street, and no word on the detention pond.
All right, last question in your goals. On the adopt a street, did we adopt 12 more from last year, or those are the same 12 we adopted
I
last
think
year?
that is the same 12. The Keep Bastrop County Beautiful did not accept any money from us this year. And so I know that they periodically work through Trey, and we put out the Adopt a Street signs. I know that they're still actively engaged in cleaning the streets, but I don't know that we've gotten any more. That was just the last known information I had.
There's no new ones.
I'm
There's
sorry?
no new ones that I know of.
Okay.
So that's the same 12 from the goals of 2018?
That's
Yes,
correct.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
In that same area, again, I appreciate y'all tying the comprehensive plan to the project plan in process, and those are completed. That really help me close the loop on several of these things, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about, this seems minutia-like to me, but I'm bringing it up for a reason. We've done the It's Time Texas event the last 2 years, the exercise.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
HEB sponsors.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was told that it wasn't on and I understand this is a strategic focus, but how do we get things like that on the work plan that
You
we're-
just tell us, and if I get enough nods, it goes on there. So would you like It's Time
I would-
Texas on there?
It would be our third year to do it, and we've done it 2 different ways. It seems to be pretty well received by the community, so I would like us from a...
Is that the one that Smithville beats us?
Yes. And we need to beat them. They're in a different category. Yes.
What category would you like that under, Mayor?
I thought it would fit under a couple of them, but you beat Smithville category, Councilman Rogers suggested. It's pretty much, I thought it could be either community safety or multimodal mobility. It doesn't matter to me. I didn't know where to put it, but I knew it wasn't anywhere, so it couldn't be worked on, and I'm just trying to keep that from being a problem. And I don't know if it belongs in strategic or if it is a subset of a work plan.
How about we just put it in organizational excellence?
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, I got one nod from the...
I'm sufficiently getting nods, Mayor. You're in like flints.
All right.
Anything else that we need to discuss to add to the work plan? And what drives this work plan is things that y'all have discussed throughout the year, either in building Bastrop or some project that we've brought up that has created some kind of addition beyond the comprehensive plan or the capital improvements. And I think you can pretty much see that most of this is building what we've spent the last year designing.
I have a strategic, and I don't expect anything to be done on it immediately, but I would really like us to consider creating a utility of broadband Bastrop.
Okay.
We're talking about other ways to have revenue. I am personally exhausted at the folks that complain about our broadcasting ability because of the service that our free service that we get from the 2 large cable services, and I think that we've already got the poles. I think it could be a utility, and I think it could be an opportunity for our citizens, and when there's time, when it's appropriate, I personally would like to see us add that. And for me, broadband Bastrop, and we know the Mount Bellevue, which I never say right. We know that there's already a precedent of towns our size being able to do that, and particularly if it could generate some revenue, and most importantly, in my mind, ideally, it could be revenue for the city, a cheaper service for the citizens and a better service. That's just a win all the way around.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Ennis, I happened to walk by you this evening, and you had a brilliant idea that you mentioned you might want to add to this evening.
You mean about the bridge?
Yes.
Last year we got a presentation from Justin at the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association, and he kind of piqued my interest because he mentioned a 2% that the city could add to help for projects. Well, I didn't really understand it. I was talking to the mayor last week, and she said, well, go find out what it's all about. So I pursued that over the last week with the help of our attorney. And it basically comes out to the fact that we could pass a venue tax of 2 percentage points that would raise, I think you figured about $1 million, $1.2 million.
A little under $1 million, I think, wasn't it?
Per year, and but that can only be used for things like convention centers. So bottom line, we could swap out, and this came directly from Justin, that we could swap out the monies we put into the convention center out of our hot tax into the bridge under the heading of preservation, and use the venue tax money to support the convention center. And it would be, I asked specifically, is there a cap on how much we can dedicate to preservation, because we already spend some on the museum and visitor center. And the word I got back was no. So it's an option of us having a nice little kitty every year to, instead of taxing our residents, we would be adding 2% on to our hotel motel bills.
That's what I wanted to get to. The venue tax would only be applicable to hotel tax.
Right. It would just.
And right now we're at 6 and 7 for a total of 13. Is the maximum venue tax 2%?
I think so. I'm not
but
for sure.
But you
of that.
talking about Austin, was it like 17? You might share
Well,
that.
Susan
Now-
Smith sent us all an email and that's why I'm asking because the max of hotel tax is 19%, and City of Austin just passed to go to the max. And since we're at 13, I didn't know if the venue tax is a max of 2 or if it's just a hotel tax to a max of 19.
I'm not sure of that.
Well, by putting it in the work plan, we can work on
all those answers.
Well, it would be sweet if we could find a way to pay that $11 million over a time period without taxing our own citizens, and we could get started on it. It doesn't mean that we can't go out for grants and other funding.
That's correct.
And apply that on top of it. So, and I don't know if the venue tax, once you've got the convention center paid off, goes away, or if it's something.
We still have several more years paying on the convention center, don't we? Yeah.
10, I think, to be exact.
I'm not going to quote Tim, but we have there's quite a few more.
Well, and anything we have, to your point, we could still pursue, and I have begged the feds, I have begged the state. I know Mayor Pro Tem Nelson begging some folks that he knows. We're all in the begging mode to try to generate funds for the bridge, but I think that's a great idea.
Well, the beauty of that is that it becomes a dedicated revenue source, and
Yes.
we have money to design the solution to the bridge. What we don't have is money to fix the bridge, and you can't design the bridge and then not fix it, because then the design goes away and you've wasted the money. So as soon as we know we have money to fix it, then we can get busy about designing it. So I got excited, gave him a little fist bump. This might be like the best answer ever.
And meanwhile, we know it's going to cost more than nothing, and the more we can start tucking away, we may even have grants that require matching, and we would already have the matching set aside, and I think it opens up all kinds of. I don't see a downside unless there may be some of our citizens that run bed and breakfast that won't be thrilled to be upping their tax by another 2%, but the alternative is to increase our taxes for every citizen.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, there's no good options, right?
Right.
So, but
And
that
at
feels like-
$11 million, that's quite a tax.
that's quite a tax.
For our citizens.
I like it.
I know you don't want to hear this R word, but can we fit the rodeo somewhere in your work plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm ready to hear about fire engines.
Mayor, before we do that, can we take a bio break?
Yeah,
Bio
we
break,
absolutely
please?
can. It is 7:59, and we are going to take a 5-minute bio break. You can go to the corner in a nanosecond. Yeah, you could be in timeout. Okay, it is 8:06 and we are back in regular session, or in workshop session. I had one council member say, let's move on the agenda, and I had another council member say, I'm not done with all my questions. I know we have, oh, I had one who was not joking. So the fact that it is 8:06, I would make the recommendation that we go ahead and do 2B and 2C, and then we decide after that, because some of the presentations may actually answer some questions, and then we'll decide after staff has presented whether we need to meet.
Can I ask a friendly question?
Sure.
How close are you to having your questions answered? If we're 2 or 3 off, could we just stay on point?
I think we're more.
Oh,
than
okay.
that.
Okay.
And so so I think that's a fairer question to ask after we see the presentations, because that may take care of a couple of them.
Okay.
So with that, is council okay with that? And then we'll decide if we're going to meet tomorrow. So we're on 2B, receive briefing on fire department budgetary needs, including the purchase and financing of new equipment, and provide feedback to staff. Council, I know we just got it this evening, but there's some pretty substantial changes in the blue line document, and I know you're going to go over maybe some changes in some equipment, but just it is worth taking time to read the transmittal memo, because I think in the last time we've been focusing on what we had marked up, but we need to take time to read the new memo.
And the new memo catches a lot of the things that I acknowledged from the dais weren't right. So that's the bulk of what it is.
Well, but there's the additional fire command vehicle, and there's some changes in the, so I just want them to read that.
Yes. Those are things that were included in your budget that just because my hair was on fire when I wrote the memo, were left off, not because I was hiding anything. It just, that was not in my mental state when I wrote it.
No pun intended of your hair on fire and the
fire.
vehicle.
Yes, ma'am. The next item on the agenda, you might recall in April, Chief Rosales was here and did an excellent presentation of educating you and the community on the needs of the fire department. And so we indicated at that point how precariously we were living. I got a sense from all of you that you shared that concern and were very interested in fire being made the number one priority in the budget. And we are certainly here this evening to begin to answer some very specific questions regarding that. In the Chief's presentation this evening is a situation that happened last week in the city of Round Rock. And it was a fire that happened at a retirement community. And it gave me great pause. And I happened to be watching the news with my husband, and I made the comment that I'm grateful that that's not Bastrop, and I hope that we can get our challenges taken care of before we are presented with a similar situation. So I have asked Andreas to include this in the presentation tonight, because Round Rock did everything right and got really lucky. And we need to use this as a great explanation on why we're making fire department our number one priority, and we're spending real money. And it happened, and so it was timely. So I just wanted to put that into perspective. It's not intended to be a scare tactic. It actually happened. It could happen anywhere. And I think it just underscores your commitment, A, to infrastructure, and in this instance tonight, it's life safety infrastructure. And with that, Chief Rosales, kick it off.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, City Manager, Council, Mayor. So before we start, I just wanted to, I happened to be talking to the Assistant Chief yesterday, and we both went 1894, it's 125 years that the fire department has been in the city of Bastrop. So we're planning something for October for Fire Prevention Month to celebrate our 125 years of being within the city and our continued service. And so we'll get that out and we'll let you know. But it is an exciting time for us. There's a lot of firsts going on. I'm proud of our department, proud to be a part of it. And so as we go through this, I hope it kind of kind of shows through. But just a reminder from back when April, was there a question?
Right. You said 1894.
1894. So I
But
realized,
on the-
yeah. So we have the sign guys are supposed. So what happened is the letter fell off. Actually, one of the blocks, it's on a block. The block fell off. They put the block back up and they put the numbers backwards. It is actually 1894. It is correct. Yeah, not 49. 1894.
Another legend for your fire department.
Yes,
Very
yes.
good.
And so this has been the first picture. We have it. I've had it up there many times. You're the first to catch it. But yes, that sign is incorrect. So it's in the process of being changed. That's a warranty
Too bad
work.
you don't know somebody who could have photoshopped that for you.
Yes.
You could have avoided
Actually, he took the picture. So, but just a reminder from April who we are. We're a combination fire department. We have one full-time chief, myself, 22 part-time day staff, the 3 positions that we talked about earlier, 3 positions per day right now, 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. We have 20 volunteer staff, and actually I got 3 more on, so now we're at 23 in the last couple of weeks. So they are on call 24 hours a day, very vital to us. And then we have 1 contract fire inspector, and he's actually become my assistant chief here in the recent month. So, but we'll talk more about him as we get through. So, as the city manager alluded to, the Round Rock Fire Department had a call for a structure fire at a senior living facility. They had 54 residents and 12 staff members. The call was at 6:41 p.m. The fire chief of that department escalated the fire alarm from a single alarm to a 3-alarm. Now, for the city of Round Rock to have the fire chief go to a call is very unusual. They have this battalion chiefs. They have a very hierarchy, and the fire chief normally does not go on a call. So for him to be there and to escalate that alarm, that is a huge, huge thing. And so they took the 3-alarm, got them 11 fire trucks, and that's the department's entire fleet. So their entire city was at one location at that time. The fire was on the rooftop and the air conditioning units. They have, I'll show you here in a minute. You get it? We've been trying to chase that one. But they have up on the roof, they have a enclosed or a cutaway area that housed the AC unit. So they were kind of hidden away. You couldn't see them, but they were up on the rooftop. The fire was stopped because of a aerial apparatus they had and a sprinkler system that was contained into the attic space. So the sprinkler system didn't allow the fire to reach through the attics or through the roof line, and the aerial allowed them to get up there and to put the fire out. So I kind of got a couple pictures here. This is what they looked like when they got there. This was pre-fire arriving. This is them. They got the aerial device up there, using the monitor and extinguishing the flames up on top. And so that you can see there, if you see there on the right side of the roof line where it kind of divots down, they've got a hole there where it actually burned through. So it got into the attic space, but due to the sprinkler system being inside the actual attic, it's not just in the occupancy, but in the attic, it stopped the fire. So let's put that into what's our city. So this is the Riverwood Commons on Old Austin Highway. They have a senior community, similar. They have 70, it's set up for 70 max. Currently they only have 46 residents. They have 3 staff members that are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 to 4:30. The other times, there's nobody there. So it's just a free-for-all for just the residences there. It is currently a sprinkler 13R. The Round Rock was at 13, and so there's a difference. So 13R is a residential sprinkler system. It does not have the attic space sprinkler. So, and there's some other regulations, and I'm sure the assistant chief inspector back there can throw out the code for 13, but it meets the 13 NFPA 13R. So it has a less fire suppression system than what the Round Rock facility had. The Round Rock facility was less than a year old, so this one I think is going on 4 or 5 years now. I don't remember the exact date. They have full intentions to build a mirror image of this right behind it, so with the same capacities as the current one. And so fire prevention and fire suppression are equally important. They have to go hand in hand. The codes have to meet each other. We have to meet them, we have to understand them, and we've got to be able to work back and forth in order to prevent these type of incidents from getting out of hand. So that is important to us. So our current, we talked about in April, our current fire apparatus with the 2 engines, the 1 tender, 1 rescue, 2 brush trucks, 2 command vehicles, and 1 utility, and then the 2 boats. And so we talked about last time was engine 11, 2014, and some things have changed since then. The continued maintenance, the truck is currently still out of service. It's not here. It hasn't been here for about 2 months now. It's been at the shop getting repairs done. It has, we put it together. It's been 152 days out of service since August of 2018. So almost a year, or half a year, it's been out of service. It's not been going en route to calls. So reliability, there's a significant concern with this vehicle. This is one of the ones that we will be replacing, that we have proposed. Our next one is engine 21. It's just got a couple of little preventive maintenance. Its issue is it's got a lot of years. So it's got about 16 years on it. It's got a lot of road miles. So it's definitely been put up wet lots of times. So talking about NFPA 1710, I know I brought this last time, but we've talked about the standard for the apparatus requirements and our average response times. And again, it was they recommend 4 minutes. We have an average of 6 minutes getting that first engine company on scene. The remaining response was within 8 minutes, and then we are currently getting that second remaining response at 19 to 21 minutes. It's still remained the same since our since April. We haven't had too much changes on that time. But some of the things we've worked on in the budget is we've augmented it by the part-time staffing. So we've requested the additional part-time staff to move, to add an additional, to go from 3 to 4, to put 2 on days and to put 2 on nights. And I'll talk more about that here shortly. And so that augmented staffing, and then also the police department staffing. And Chief Altgeld, you want to?
So one of the things that we are doing is, because nighttime response is a concern for us, and right now on a daytime response with our 3 paid positions, which would go to 2, and then with the chief and the assistant chief, depending on how bad things would be, to get the maximum people out at nighttime, we're looking at training 4 police officers, cross-training, and having them dual certified as peace officers and as firefighters under the Texas Commission of Fire Protection. There was a high interest in that, a lot of excitement on that, and so they will be paid a substantial stipend once they complete their training and they get their TCFP or certification. So what we'll have is a maximum manpower so that when the fire alarm or the fire department is not deployed, they're providing police services and doing what we need to. And if a fire alarm does go out, then they will be certified and equipped to be one of the first line responses to take care of that until our volunteers can mobilize and get to the scene. So it seems to be a win-win situation. We're doing everything we can to maximize our human resource, if you will, and utilize our people as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, so that was part of the thinking outside the box that we had mentioned in the April meeting. So our first alarm, this is just a brief overview of what it should look like. So on a first alarm, so remember Round Rock had that first alarm. So this is what they got on a first alarm. So they got 2 engines, a ladder, actually 3 engines and a ladder and a command vehicle, and then you get 17 personnel to fill those. So, and again, you're getting that 1 engine in 4 minutes, and the rest of that, filling that entire alarm within 8 minutes. So Round Rock had a response for the 11 engines within 22 minutes. So they had 11 engines there within 22 minutes. So their first response was within the 4 minutes. They actually had the full alarm within the 4 minutes, so they got there pretty quick. But they're remaining, everybody there, doing what they need to do within 22 minutes. So apparatus requirements, again, the ladder truck, we got that going all the way back to Austin, Travis County, Giddings. That's who currently has a ladder, and that's who we've been using as mutual aid. And so accomplishing that 8 minutes. And so to get that complete alarm currently right now is 40 minutes plus or minus, if available. So we're not guaranteed anybody. So if available, we're getting that in 40 minutes. And so part of what we talked about is transitioning from 100% volunteer to paid staffing to help augment that. And so that's what we're doing with the part-time staffing. And so we're a long way from there. We won't. It's not something we're going to do overnight. But the volunteers are a vital part of this. And so without them, we will not be able to get this 17 personnel. So we're talking moving from a 3-person shift during the day to a 2-person shift, and then myself and the full-time inspector will be 2. So you got 4 right there. So that's not anywhere close to the 17. So our volunteers are important to us. It's important we maintain them and that they have a vital role in our system. And we have taken great care and lots of consideration and developing this and how we're going to implement and the type of apparatus that we're going to select doing this. So I'll talk about the apparatus in just a second. But again, the volunteers are very important, and I can't emphasize that enough. So anybody listening, we're taking volunteers always, no training. And so I think we talked about that last time. But so to move on to our apparatus that we're requesting. So the first one we're requesting is a mid-mount 100-foot aerial platform. The total cost there is $1.6 million. It comes fully equipped. Part of that cost is all the equipment that's on it. It's brand new equipment, everything we need. The build time is 10.5 to 11 and a half months, so about almost a year to get from the date we sign to the date we receive. It's about a year build time. So in that, we built in was a 10-year maintenance plan. That maintenance plan includes semi-annual and annual, so it's 2 times a year. And AC maintenance, our TAC4, which is our suspension. They call it a TAC4 suspension. It's unique to Pierce. It's unique to this apparatus. Allows the truck to do some crazy suspension things. So it's beyond my expertise, but it covers the maintenance. It covers the pump testing and our phone system. We have a phone system that injects foam into the fire lines to help put the fire out faster. And then it also covers our aerial certification. I believe the aerial certification by itself is around $18,000, and that's done annually. So we built that into the 10-year cost. We built that into that 1.6 million first. So 1.6 million, you get the truck, equipment, and then all the annual maintenance, all the way for 10 years. And so we built that into there. It's done through the company that we're purchasing from. They will be the ones that service this for its life, and so we'll have one mechanic, one everything. We'll have one person to check on. So it's a huge game changer for us, this truck. It is unique to Bastrop. It is not unique as in it's the only one in the country, but it's unique that it fits us. It is, I'll have some pictures here in a moment, but it is short. So instead of a traditional 13-foot 8 ladder from bumper or from road to the tallest point of the ladder, because normally the ladder hangs over the front end of the truck, and so you have a 13-foot height clearance. This is have a minimum of 10 foot, so we've knocked off 3 foot off the top. So that's our trees, our power lines, our downtown, just getting around specific areas. The other thing is length. So a traditional ladder length is usually around 49 foot. This truck is in the 37 to 38 foot range, so that significantly gets it smaller. So you get better turning radius, you get better, you can get around town a lot easier. And so we demoed this truck. I had them come. We drove it through town. It went through town very well. There was only one turn I could not make, and that was because I didn't make the turn correctly. So I had to back up, but and that was down in the parking lot in the public parking next to Gracie's. I tried to cut through and I tried to be fancy and get out of the fire lane. So when I got out of the fire lane, I couldn't make the turn, but absolutely. So if I'd have stayed in the fire lane, I had no issue, but I made it all the way through downtown Main Street. I turned out off Main, South Main onto Chestnut, and I had no issue turning out. It drives like an engine. It's just, it acts like an engine. It's just designed very well. The other thing is, it does fire suppression very well. One of the things, we got automatic aerial nozzles on the front. You see the 2 nozzles on the front of it that are automatic. Yes, right here on the bucket. So, yeah. So from the ground, you can control those nozzles. So each nozzle puts out 1,500 gallons of water per minute, and so you can control those nozzles from down on the ground. So what that's important is you don't have to have somebody in the bucket. So you can have somebody down on the ground, the driver, the engineer of the truck that sets the truck, that can control that, and I can have one person dedicated to that truck, and then that gives me 2 others, 3 others to go do fire suppression somewhere else.
Now, the significance of that is go back to your picture in Round Rock. How many people are in that bucket? That's all we got. And so what he's saying is that he can now have the equivalent of 2 people in that bucket from the ground. So the significance of this truck is it is a game changer in not only our ability to fight the fire, but the ability to fight it without having to add personnel. This is working smart. This is letting technology work for you.
Yeah. So, yes.
The memo said 2 pumpers and an aerial ladder truck. You're calling that an aerial platform, so this is a change because this is new stuff? Or
no, this is the aerial.
Same thing?
Same thing.
Yeah, okay.
Same thing. It's just a
That's fine.
change of word.
But it's 3 pieces of equipment for $3.3 million.
We'll get to that. So
okay,
we've changed the. Sorry.
Okay. But this is the aerial
We
ladder
address
truck, and it's $1.67 million.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yeah, and I will address the others here shortly.
I saw the parade going through town. I go by a car station, all the trucks are inside. And I go, what in the world was that? But I saw you guys.
You did see it?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just don't work too hard at this, Andreas, because you sold us last April. So
I got you.
He's saying, move on.
I got you.
We
I got
love
you.
you.
So again, the fire suppression is one of them. Water rescues and high angle rescue. And so I'll talk about.
Are you going to talk about water rescues?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So as you can see here, the height under that bridge, that's an 11-foot bridge, and so that truck fits pretty good under there. And so this is out at the high school. What we did is we're simulating here on a traditional ladder that's rear mounted. This is a mid mount. but on a rear mount, which would be the ladder would be mounted at the rear of the truck. And so when the ladder would pivot, you would get a full extension of the ladder off the rear of the truck, and so you get a lower. So if you had to back down into like the riverbank and do a water rescue and extend the ladder over. And so what this is showing is the way that the truck is set up, designed. You can use the outriggers and position that truck in the same manner as you would a traditional ladder. Even though it's mid-mounted, you get the same distance, you get everything the same. And so this is kind of setting it up for that. And so we prefer to walk off the side with this, but it can be worked off the back end.
The significance of that is that with a 100-foot aerial ladder, they can get almost across the river. Never have to put a boat in the river to be able to now do swift water rescue. This is a game changer for public safety. So now this piece of equipment is going to get us 2 firemen that don't have to be in the bucket to put water on the fire. And in an emergency management situation when we're flooding and we have to do rescue, and again, time matters, we've got an aerial piece of equipment where with limited manpower, we can safely begin to do some things. Swift water is always dangerous, going to stay dangerous, but there's a difference between rescuing off of a ladder attached to a truck than in a boat.
Yes. So this is it, sitting still. You see the 13-foot, actually Chief Upgilt and I think City Manager in the back there, but it has 18-foot spread from outrigger to outrigger, and so you can short jack, which that means is one of the jacks you can bring in, and so downtown, if you have a car parked, you can get a little more maneuverability out of it. Again, this is the other side, the back end of it, and so so that's the aerial apparatus. So now let's talk about the pumper. So this is called a PUC. It stands for pump under cab, and what that indicates is you see the silver deal there in the center of the truck. That's the pump. Traditionally, the pump is moved to the back end or between the cab and the actual cabinet space. And so what they did is they moved that pump underneath, and so you get a smaller wheelbase. And so this has a 189 inch wheelbase. So it's a smaller wheelbase. Our current one is, Eric, what's our current engine 11? I think it's in the 200.
It's bigger.
It's way bigger. Yeah, sorry, way bigger. And so we did request 2 pumpers in the budget that we proposed. We at this time we're asking to come. We're going to bring it back down. We're going to go to 1, and an additional request will come in the future. And so
let me explain that.
Sure.
There's no doubt that we could use an aerial, 2 pumpers, and SCBA. But at that point in time, we've pushed the limits beyond my comfort level and yours. So the conversation we have every day is whatever we do, we need to do right and do well so that we can ensure that we're not repeating history. So the aerial ladder, when Andreas was able to drive the short wheelbase, it changed how we viewed it as a frontline engine. A traditional aerial ladder would not be an acceptable frontline piece of equipment. You couldn't maneuver it, it wouldn't work, it would be extraordinarily frustrating. And because the aerial ladder truck now is on a 37-inch wheelbase and can go downtown, it provides us some flexibility to be a frontline engine that we currently don't have. And so what we've said is that we desperately need this aerial, we desperately need a pumper that works, but we need them to last 10 years. So we're going to invest our money in doing it right and doing it well. We're not going to get greedy. We're going to be able to have equipment that has our name on the side, that's deemed reliable, and gives us the flexibility to have that equipment in town so that we can manage whatever incident comes to us while we're waiting on help to come. And in a couple of years, we'll come back and we will address whether or not we need that second pumper. And it's possible that we may need some other equipment. But we'll make that decision at that time. But what this request tonight is the aerial, the pumper, and the SCBA, which are the minimum needs that they need to fix their problem today.
Same build time, 10 to 11 months. Same maintenance plan is included in the cost of the pumper. So everything's kind of rolled up all into one. Same maintenance covers all the way down. So talk about staffing. We talked a little bit up front. We heavily rely on ESD2, and so part-time shift, we talked about going to 2 part-time 7A to 7P, 2 part-time 7P to 7A with a 24-hour coverage. And then we asked for the additional 1 full-time, which would be an assistant chief and a fire inspector. And so that's what we budgeted, that's what we asked for, but I just want to reiterate, our volunteers are highly a big component, and they have a big role in our department.
So to back that up, is there anything that we are not doing for the volunteers that you would like us to consider doing for your volunteers?
No, currently no. So we currently we currently are giving a lot to the volunteers. There's no unmet needs, but we always, the challenge is more on their end, is their commitment to us and their ability to respond, to leave their job. And so it's more of a challenge. We've transitioned to lots of different things. We give them stipends. We change from 1099 to W-2. We've done lots of different techniques to retain or add more. But it's more on their end.
I just wanted to ask you, as the fire chief, if there is any policy decision this body can make that would help you recruit and retain your volunteers.
No, I think more of it is I don't think the citizens quite understand that we are volunteer. We get a lot of people that stop in and say, hey, where's your staff at? This is it. Like, it's just me here. And so they don't realize that we are volunteer in some aspects, or that the station is not staffed. I keep the door open when I'm there. The roll-up door is open when I'm there, and so it gives the appearance that somebody, that the station is staffed. And so we get that a whole lot, is when we are recruiting and we're saying, hey, we're accepting volunteers, is they say, I didn't know you had a volunteer. I didn't know you did volunteer. I thought you were fully paid, 100% like Austin. No, we're not. And so it's getting that word out, and we are heady in right now. I've got two of our volunteers, one captain and lieutenant, that are super excited about recruitment. I put some money in the budget. I've got some this year, and I've got some next year for doing, I guess, like going to Walmart and doing a lot of public events so we can get the word out better. And so I think that's more on us to get the word out and for everybody to spread the word that we are volunteer, and we do accept volunteers, and there is no training requirements. We'll give you all the training. We'll do everything. And so policy-wise, no, I can't.
I just know that we would do anything we
Absolutely.
can, and we will spread the word you're looking for volunteers.
Absolutely. So SCBAs, we talked about this. I do want to address one thing. In 2019, fiscal year 2019, we did ask for $70,000 for a refurbish our current SCBA packs. That would only give us a 2-year fix, and so we opted not to do the refurbishment. We opted to go with a full purchase, and the reason is when we did the refurbishment, ESD2 had not yet purchased any additional equipment or not done any changes to their fleet, and they thought about doing the same. What they did is they actually purchased the new packs, and so now we have found that there's a lot of interoperability and compatibility when we respond to calls. We go to lots of calls with each other. We have the old packs and they have new packs, and so those things don't quite go well and work with each other. So if I arrive and I need one of their bottles, it's a little challenging to adjust because they went to 30-minute bottles, and there's a challenge in adjusting. And so we opted not to do the $70,000. We opted to come back and recommend a full replacement to be equivalent to ESD2, and so that way we keep the compatibility, we keep the interoperability, and so that also gives us, instead of just 2 years with $70,000, that gives us, we were going to 30-year bottles, so we're going to have 30 years in the bottles and 15 years in the packs. So it's, instead of just 2 years, we got extended life out of everything. And so we thought it was when we met, we thought as a group that was the best solution. That's what going forward. And so I've got it listed here. 20 air packs is what we need, and then these are the costs, how it breaks down. 40 bottles, 20 face masks, RIP packs, 2 60-minute bottles for the RIP packs, and that brings the total cost to $208. So for $208, we get everything, we get all new and matching with what the ESD does.
So if I did super quick math, we're somewhere around $2.8 million for one pump, one truck, and the SCBA.
So I got you up
there you
here.
go.
Yeah, I got you up here, and the total cost so far for the platform, the pumper, the air packs, and the total cost is $2.8 million. And so this total is less than what we originally proposed in the budget that we evaluated, and I'll turn this over to Tracy in just a second to talk about the financing. Is there any other questions specifically about these and the numbers? Yes, sir.
Where's the 70,000?
It's still in the innovation fund.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
All right, I will turn it over to Tracy.
So we did want to highlight that we have looked at several financing options, And right now, the manufacturer is offering a prepaid discount of almost $84,000, which is desirable to try to work that out. So I've been working with our financial advisor and having him run schedules to compare that against our debt service fund, the capacity we have in our debt service fund at our current tax rate. And so we are able to do the $2.8 million bond issuance with no changes or adjustment in the tax rate. Just steps moving forward. Obviously, we need council's blessing or a consensus that y'all are in agreement for us to move forward with this. We'll also need to include a bond page in the budget. Right now, it's in the memo, but the numbers, and there is no bond in the actual budget document itself. So we want to make sure that that gets appropriated when we adopt the budget. We will bring back a reimbursement resolution to council. The timing on that is probably going to be the first meeting in October. That way we can go ahead and produce a purchase order and pay the equipment prepaid to go ahead and get the discount. And then we will go through the steps of laying out the timeline and selling the bonds to reimburse the city. And so that's the timeline on that.
Didn't we say Chris and the water wastewater thing was first meeting in October as well? So, and city manager and I can talk about this more in the future, but we really may workshop Chris and maybe do a second night, because that's going to be a big topic, and it sounds like that October 1st meeting may be a big, this should be super easy.
This is the least of your worries, because what we need tonight is consensus that you're willing to authorize $2.8 million. And if you're willing to do that, we're going to create a sheet in the bond section or the other debt so that there is an expectation that we're going to sell it, and then there is a place to put it when the money is received. The reimbursement resolution essentially allows us to issue a purchase order and meet the federal regulations of how you spend certificate of obligation funds. I'm going to say to Tracy, I'd be willing to bet it's the last meeting in September, not the first meeting in October, because we need to get ahead of all of the purchase orders that are going to come in October, because we desperately need this equipment. We are living on borrowed time, and we need to get ahead of the rush that will come October 1st. So I'm going to ask that we approve this at the end of September so that we beat everybody else in the manufacturing line so that this equipment gets to Bastrop before it gets somewhere else.
So, council, is there anyone opposed to the bond issuance?
No.
Everybody's okay? Okay. Councilmember Peterson just gave you the blessing.
We all good?
Okay.
Okay.
You had us in April.
Yeah.
And out of respect for your skills and commitment, we went ahead and listened to you again tonight.
Thank you.
But we wanted to know that it could be paid for, what we could do as the policymakers to enhance your capabilities of doing that. And you've provided us that information. So thanks.
Thank you.
I did have a question, I'm sorry. Okay, so I know the big ladder truck will take like 11 months. The pumper truck, how long will that take to get here?
It was
The
10
same
to
amount?
11, yeah.
And the breathing, all the breathing stuff?
As soon as we place the order with that one, it's usually 1 or 2 months for that one.
Oh, okay, just curious. I just wanted the public to know about, once we approve this, about how long will they see the shiny red stuff?
Yeah. The thing that is important to note about that aerial is that is a game changer in the world of fire. And they talked about they are working, I think, with 45 or 50 other agencies that are going to significantly alter that schedule. And so that's why I'm saying we got to do it sooner, because we want to be at the front end of that 50.
Okay. Speaking of doing things sooner, have we finished 2B?
Do you mind if I just add one thing real quick,
Please.
So, as we all know, Chief Rosales became our interim fire chief in September, and then on November 19th of last year, he was appointed the full-time permanent position. Since that time, not only did he orchestrate with his staff this amazing vehicle equipment replacement program, identifying our problems, motivating our volunteer staff, many days that I've seen during inclement weather and fire season that we have volunteers just hanging out at the fire station, which was something that I didn't see on a regular basis. One of the reasons was maybe I wasn't in tune, but the other thing is there definitely seems to be a sense of high energy, and he's doing an amazing job recruiting his volunteers and keeping them motivated and informed and in the loop. But another thing that was required was when we started the planning review and our contract with Assistant Chief DeArmond coming in, is that Chief Rosales had to learn and become a member of the Development Review Committee. And one of those things that is required in his job title is becoming a basic fire inspector. The time period to obtain this certification, that's not easy at all, is anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And I'm going to tell you that Chief Rosales started this in January, along with all the other duties that he had. And last Friday, he passed his skills test. So he took a 2-year process for certification and completed it in 8 months. Okay, 8 months. It's 160 classroom hours, a skills test. Now, the state in its infinite wisdom is going to take anywhere from 60 to 90 days to issue a certificate, so his license, so that he can sign off on those plans. But I'm going to tell you, people said it couldn't be done, and it was 18 months to 2 years at the best case scenario, and our chief did it in 8 months. So strong work, Andre.
Great
Thank
job.
you so much.
Great job. Awesome.
That sounds like a good press release that somebody needs to release there later on then.
Thank you.
Great job. All right. Thank you, Chief Altgeld, for sharing that information with us. Okay, we're moving on to 2C. You got a hard act to follow there, Mr. Job, just giving you a heads up.
Everybody wants to be a fireman or police officer.
There you go. Receive, but nobody wants their house flooded. Receive briefing on drainage needs, include the sale of a $485,000 short-term tax note, and provide feedback to staff. Mr. Job.
Please don't let your house flooded.
Yeah, no one wants their house flooded.
Well, this is how we're going to fix it. So we're going to talk about what is a master plan, and I believe it's $465,000. Is that right, Tracy? So we just saved you $20,000 right then. So it's a good deal. So basically,
so we just found the money for the permit.
It's a typo.
I'm just saying.
It just boils down to I can't keep that number straight in my head, so I'm to blame. It's
Well, he can't have it both
465,000.
ways, so you didn't find us 20. Keep going.
I found a typo. Sorry. So the objective here is to identify the problem areas. We're going to develop some flood mitigation solutions, get some cost estimates with this master drainage plan, prioritize some CIPs, projects, and the drainage master plan will also conduct a rate study to evaluate whatever's needed for a future utility. So how are we going to take care of that? Well, task one, we're going to get lots of public engagement because everyone's got something to say about when they were flooded before since 2015, how it's happened. So we really want to find those areas, as much public input as possible, and then start the process. I believe HAP actually has about 6 meetings scheduled in here, so we get lots of time with council, lots of time with the public, and lots of time with staff. We're going to look at the previous studies that we've done. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to list the drainage complaints again and do some really good field survey. I won't read through everything because the slides are up there are going to tell you the same thing. So let's move forward. So the riverine portion of this, when I actually talked to Mr. Morales today, they have studied the entire Colorado watershed from Austin to Bastrop all the way out down to Bay City since 2005, and have looked at almost 60% of all the creeks that are in Bastrop and Travis County. So that's huge. They have a really great knowledge base that we can draw from. We have our own Gills Branch UD analysis, which I'm sure everybody's super familiar with. We've got the Piney Creek, which we've done as well. Copper's Creek, which is just above and through Unit 6 there at Tahitian. And then this is where we're actually lacking a little data because we've got some improvements that can happen. It was an unnamed watershed on the FEMA map, so I just called it Hunter's Creek because it comes out right behind Hunter's Crossing and makes its way all the way behind the wastewater treatment plant. And to some of the improvements we're going to do, we really want to get some at minimum base level engineering on this creek. And then we're going to take our localized flooding analysis, and basically what that looks like is we're going to do something over the entire city, conduct a rapid assessment of duty models. What that looks like is you take the Atlas 14 data and you dump that rainfall over the entire city and you look for all the spots that flood. This is similar to what we did downtown, which is why you see the picture there. Once we get that information, we're going to get back with staff, and these guys maintain about 70 miles of storm sewer, and just in the last 3 years, they've done several local repairs. They know where the complaints are at. They even installed the flood gauges, as you can see in some of the pictures. So they're going to come back with staff and verify what we thought we saw on the map and make sure it's real in real life. So as part of that, what you get for this master drainage plan is a drainage utility fee rate study to include the CIP projects, the maintenance for the crews and the staff that we're going to need to maintain that, and then develop a single residential rate, tiered structure, and all of that for estimated worst case cost scenario of $240,000.
The reason that is a worst case is that we have to sit down with the team from Half and Associates and really get into the minutiae. So we ask for scope of magnitudes. Anything that is not used for the master drainage plan will then roll into the Gills Branch. So it's all going to go for drainage.
Well, and I appreciate that they have a large database, but we've also spent money with them, and so we don't need to be paying.
That's correct,
twice.
And that's why it will be. When I spoke to Paul, I said, you've really got a lot of data for us. I think that's a little high. He said, I agree, but I need to work the numbers, and he's going to have that to me by Friday.
Yeah, we need to be fair to them, but we also need to be looking out for our taxpayers.
That's right, and he'll have that to us by Friday, is what he told me today. So, now that we've got our master drainage plan complete and we're all ready to move forward, let's talk about the Gills Branch improvements. So, as part, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but just to go over it one more time, The preliminary design phase, what we've asked them to do is take the preliminary design phase that we had talked about in, was it February, I think, last year? And even, I think maybe in May or June, Mr. Morales came back and gave us our capital improvement projects. And to give us a little more in-depth survey for phases 1 through 3. So at a preliminary level, you would do a lot of base level engineering survey. This is a little more in-depth, combined with that local data that we talked about gathering as part of the master drainage plan, so that we can put all that together and come up with our capital improvement.
So let me say
plan
what he's
design.
saying a different way. Instead of engineering these in 3 distinctive sections, they're going to do all of the base survey work one time. They're going to evaluate the channel, all of the rights of way, and they're going to get all of that established one time. And then that model then will be how they'll design the 3 sections. So it's will be about a 30% set of plans at this point, but be very easy for us to move to shovel ready because the heavy lifting of the survey data will be done. This is the most critical piece of the puzzle.
And the survey part of it's not going to change in time, like the bridge, the state of the bridge is changing over time. The survey data is not going to change, and the setup costs, it's just like contract mobilization. Now you're paying for it once instead of paying for it 3 times. It's
Correct.
a really smart way to do it.
And that was a conversation we had, was we would rather ask that we did a lot more of the upfront basic level engineering and survey up front. So our objectives here are, like I said again, to get the design plan prepared for all 3 phases at one time, and then reduce creek overflows for portions of the downtown area. The whole project itself is approximately, for the entire design of Gills Branch, about 4,500 linear feet of channel improvements. A lot of people don't think about these, but these won't change. These are got the same road crossings. We'll do again the enhanced survey we talked about, get some geotech done, so we have good soil conditions. Because remember, as people start to develop and we have redevelopment, it's great to have the best available data that we can supply to those folks too. So as they discharge into these creeks, we can tell you exactly what kind of geotechnical soils we have in this area. And then we're going to obtain some subsurface utility information, which they'll get from us in our GIS layers. There's going to, of course, there's going to be some environmental assessments that go with this. We'll refine those DD models that we've done previously, prepare plans and specs, and get things ready to go. This is important because the Texas Water Development Board is actually putting together a flood mitigation plan for the entire state. There was $793 million that were transferred from the Economic Stabilization Fund, which is called the Rainy Day Fund, ironically, since it's to do with flooding. So the state actually put this money in to develop a flood management plan, and in early to mid-2020, they're actually going to have projects. We want to be the first in line to have a shovel-ready project so that we can move forward. So if we have this base level engineering ready to go, it's final engineering, start construction on phase 1, find out where we're going to get the funding from.
I attended a Water Alliance conference in March and met the guy that decides who in the region gets the money, and remind me, I'll give you his contact information and just make sure that we're tied in with him. He's called a couple times and said, is there anything we can do to help? So we just need to leverage every angle. He was the political side of it. I'll make sure I share that with you.
Perfect. So for this Gills Branch preliminary engineering, we're also talking about 165 to 200, and that was with the increase in enhanced survey work. So that still keeps us under our originally 265. Just to give a refresher to everyone, Gills Branch Phase 1, to do the first initial improvement was about $975,000. Phase 2 was $2.2 million, almost $2.3 million. And you can see as you go along, the water starts to disappear from the localized flooding. And again, Phase 3, when it's nice and complete, was another little over almost $1.1 million. So and these are not costs associated with that. These are later capital costs that we would build in. But it doesn't have to do with the engineering. This is just a recap on what Mr. Morales touched on, how to fix the problems in Gills Branch. With that, I'll take any questions.
Good job, Trey. Council, questions for Mr. Doe?
Well laid out.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. Okay, we have finished 2C. Council, it is almost 9 o'clock. So how are we doing over there? Are we done? Do we have more questions? Do we want to regroup tomorrow? I need some input. Feel free, jump in.
We have a consensus to carry further that we can, but if y'all can, or, well, I see from the nods over there, I'll leave it to other.
Okay, I'm hearing we're done. Is that?
Well, I have more questions, but I don't know if.
So do we
the
want
bills
to
over here
come
are
back
wanting
at
to keep
6:30 or
Do you see all
regroup
these tabs?
tomorrow? Yeah, and you And all these tabs from Mr. Nelson, or Mayor Pro Tem Nelson as well, has a few questions. Okie dokie. All right. So, is there any? Let me ask it this way: is there anything that we would not talk in great detail, but can we kind of give staff an idea of topics, just in case? Is there? Hey, I've got this major question that I know you're going to have to look something up, or
that would be very important. I'm happy to, and we are collectively happy to just sit and answer questions on every page. But if there is something that you think we could do some research on, put together a PowerPoint that might take out 12 of your questions at one time and holistically answer your question, that would be time well spent for us tomorrow to be prepared to be able to give you the information you need to make an informed decision.
While he's looking, y'all will appreciate this, and I'm looking down because I don't want to see the rolled eyes. On page 88, it shows the average time of power outage, and you have the goal as more than 60 minutes, and I'm pretty sure you mean less than 60 minutes. Your sign's the wrong direction. That's on page 88.
The performance measures have not been flushed out. They will be addressed in the final budget that is adopted and handed out to you in November. The cabinet and I have not had time to clearly do the work necessary, and that is a September item. And so what will happen is we will finalize those, and so in the budget book that you get in November when it's final, there are a couple of departments that they're still vacant, and that's just because I haven't had the bandwidth to circle back. But part of the expectation is that is going to begin to set some customer service expectations on how we're going to do services. And what they'll be doing in September in order to start the new year off on the right foot of October 1st is begin to have all of the processes in place. We're, as y'all well know, pushing a lot of that through with the Development Review Committee and the work that y'all are adopting on the 27th that will set the policies and procedures for the development. So much like that journey that we took on the 14th, we're doing that internally in a lot of our areas. So I appreciate you sharing that, but just know that we did not vet those things because its time has not come.
Okay, and that's helpful. Then I won't be looking at those knowing that you haven't. But you gave me a book, so I looked at the book. Have you thought of any other general questions or any?
Yeah, I'd like to look more at the asset inventory of what we have. We say in our financial policy we maintain an asset inventory, and I'm real concerned about us getting the useful life out of all of our assets. And I'd like to look at that a little bit more.
We can certainly email that to you, but I can save you from looking at it. There's a number of things that are duct tape baling wire that have not been maintained at the level they should because it wasn't a priority, but it predates me. I will tell you that we are absolutely heavy on making sure that all of we call them PM maintenance for those at home, preventative maintenance. All of that has been evaluated, and in some of the budgets you will see the maintenance accounts are actually going up because we can't replace them the way they need to because we don't have the money. So we are having to increase the maintenance account, and in all of the instances that are there, it is still cheaper to maintain than to buy. The ones that we have put in your budget this year, there are some, his vehicle comes to mind. Andreas has one that's a command vehicle. We could probably limp along, but for the function they have to do, it's not worth the risk?
Let me reframe the statement.
Okay.
I'm not looking from operational aspects. I'm looking more from shaping policy to ensure that y'all have the tools to maintain this equipment. I really don't want to get into the minutia of each and every piece of equipment, but in the overall policy side of maintaining the city resources.
Okay, so let me say this to you. I'm not sure that I'm ready for you to have that policy conversation. One of the things that is in our work plan to bring you next year, there are 3 things. One is park maintenance, because we have not addressed park maintenance at all. So there is no policy expectation on how I'm to budget, because we've not set that standard of care. We've also not done that with building maintenance. And so one of the things that Curtis and his team is doing is an inventory of roofs. How old are they? In what condition are they in? Carpet, paint, so that we can put a scope of magnitude on building maintenance. And the third is the vehicle equipment replacement fund, which is your asset list you're looking for. We've done some work on it, but it is not at all where it needs to be. I am happy to share it with you, but there are 3 policy conversations that you have to help us with in order for me to tell you what the needs long-term are. And those are in our work plan, and that's the vehicle replacement, building maintenance, and park maintenance for next year. So I'm happy to give it to you, but I don't know how good it's going to be, because we haven't done the work we need to in order to shape what you need to make the policy decision that I desperately need to answer your question.
That's partly what I wanted to hear. I want to make sure that we're providing you the policy tools for which y'all to do the job that y'all would really like to do. So
yes, sir.
Good, thank you.
I have a question. I don't understand setting a level of what was the term you used?
Standard of care.
Standard of care for the parks. Are we not?
So every community values parks differently. And let's take an athletic field, because it's something that's easy to quantify. Some communities have ball fields, and they are perfectly happy with them being bush hogged, and volunteers going out and spray painting chalk and calling it a field. If you happen to be in a school district 5A where scholarships are important and collegiate athletes are built from your little leagues, you spend $63 million on bond issues, and you build sports complexes that rival your 5A universities. That's the difference in standard of care. And that's a policy decision.
I'm pretty sure we don't have the $63 million yet.
No.
So we'll be.
So what needs to happen, council member, is this. We have to go through our parks and do an inventory of what resources are there and have to be maintained. Park benches, barbecue pits, playground equipment, those kinds of resources. What kind of amenities are there? Do we have complete trails, or 2/3 of them are there and 1/3's missing? We have bathrooms. We have to maintain the infrastructure in the bathrooms. So we just have to have an inventory. And then we have to determine what kind of programming that we want. Do we want to just be park maintenance, or we want to augment recreation that we have currently provided as the YMCA portion of our program? And so all of that then leads to maintenance, because do we want shade structures over playground equipment? And if we do, are we prepared to replace them every 5 years? So that's a conversation y'all have never had with me, because we've been busy working on streets, water, and bridges that we've kept closed. So we haven't gotten to those kinds of things. But in order for us to address moving forward, what kind of resources as a community do we need to take care of all the things that we're responsible for, we've now got to get to that.
So bottom line, it's basically for us and for our citizens, we've just never done it as organized on such an organized level before. we've just gone out there and mowed the grass and
Response, right?
we've more responded more than being proactive.
Well, you've never set a standard, and so what happens is like we need to update our park master plan. Well, that's great, but I don't know what direction you're going to give the park board to update your park master plan because there's no standard for which them to do. So they meet, we hire a consultant, they meet and they dare to dream. And they bring you $60 million worth of park stuff and you're going to roll your eyes and go, seriously, we're not going to do that. So there has to begin to have some conversation in relationship to, as a community, what do we expect? And then that expectation then translates into park master plans. And park master plans lead to capital improvement plans. And you build the capital. And then there's a maintenance component in your budget to maintain that at the level of care that the community wants.
I got you.
We've not had any of that conversation with me here, which we'll do next year.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
And there are park standards. There are national as well as state standards on different things for parks and things that we can look at. And having developed many park master plans and worked with the National Recreation Park Association as well as the state, and I'm glad that I'm the liaison now with the Parks Board. I'll be glad to try to assist in that process and work with that because that's something I think that we definitely need to look into. And I thought we'd started that years ago, but somehow we're not associated with any of those organizations anymore. So
I can't speak to the past. I can tell you since March 17th of 2017, we haven't had a park conversation.
And we have no adopted policy for the city of Bastrop.
That's right.
okay.
So for some broad brush strokes that
Yes,
I would like is, and I don't think it'll be hard, I don't think it's any work, but the Innovation Fund has gotten a lot of attention, and since it was, and I understand, and it's clear in here that last year the budget was 2.1 million and we only spent 1.5. There's a lot of projects listed. It might be worth just to having a few minutes on a reconciliation because there's kind of money moving here and there, and I personally think it wouldn't hurt to go over that. Is anybody else opposed to that? So to me, that's a topic for tomorrow night. Secondly, I know that some of you asked for additional information on the community support, and we've received information from the city manager. So since we have received that information, if there's any adjustments that you want to make, I would encourage you to bring that tomorrow night. We ought to have a community support discussion. And then for me, I think there are a few policy discussions, and I don't think we can complete the policy discussions tomorrow night, but we may talk about them. And two that come to mind is I believe we should adopt a travel policy and look at our travel policy. We need to have an agreement of what conferences and as council what we should expect city to pay for, and as council if you're doing on your own what you need to decide on your own of what to pay for. But I think we should have a travel policy discussion, and I am also interested in having, and I'm calling it a sponsorship policy because I don't know what else to call it, and I believe we should have a discussion about sponsorships, internal and external. And I consider internal to be any money that has been collected, whether it's from our taxpayers, whether it's from sales tax, whether it's from hot funds or whatever. If it is somehow within our buckets and then it gets moved to another bucket, I think we need to have a policy discussion about that, as well as I think we should have a policy discussion about what we do on sponsorships externally.
For instance?
Chamber. Okay. When we're spending tax dollars and sending it to an entity that does not collect tax dollars, is that an appropriate spend? And I'd like to have it somewhat holistically, because I don't want it to be like, well, I didn't like how that one event went down. I think we should set some standards on that. I'm not saying that again, I don't think we can complete that whole conversation, but if we have some budget sponsorships that are moving money between buckets, I think that's something we ought to talk about and address before we adopt the budget. Is that making sense?
Perfect.
Okay. Council, are you opposed to? Okay. Any other major ones for tomorrow?
Well, I know.
She's getting out of
Okay. I know a lot of my stickies are on the, several of the different accounts or layouts have an other fees, and some are understandable, you know, a couple $1,000s, but there's a couple of them that have others for $100,000. Well, you know, when you're looking at that many fees, maybe a little bit more explanation for other.
So, can you give me for instance, because the challenge, and we sat down with the mayor yesterday and ran into the proverbial governmental accounting fund.
Oh my God, that made my head hurt.
And so there are things that Tracy has to do that creates confusion to meet government finance standards and fund accounting. And it did make the mayor's head spin, because in the utility fund, there are 3 funds that have to be rolled up into one fund. And so when you look at inter-fund transfers in and out to make her fund bucket work, it's real confusing. So it ensures we get a clean audit. It just doesn't necessarily make sense to you. So if you can give a for instance, then we can determine whether it's a Tracy accounting bucket or if it's a question that we can really answer for you.
We could certainly go through all of this because they're in just about every one of them.
Give her an example.
Okay, on page 163, it's under planning and zoning. Other charges is $47,000. This is you know, it's just the one they get really large, and it's just under other. It just seems, you know.
163, planning and zoning.
It's the way the accounts are grouped. For instance, the contractual services, there might be multiple accounts that roll up into that subcategory. And so we have certain subcategories, and one of the subcategories is other, because it doesn't fit into personnel, supplies, maintenance, repairs, occupancy, or contractual services. So it's an other.
Can you give an example of another?
Well, let me give you a big
Running
one.
a
yeah.
On page 197.
Travel and training is under other.
Under 197 under Main Street, the other charges are $268,000.
What we will do is we will bring our computer tomorrow, and we will get off in the weeds as deep as you want to get in the minutia.
When it's really, really big, then it's just like, okay. You know, when you're talking $200,000.
And while that sounds like it's something significant, yesterday the mayor wanted to debate $4 million worth of other funds transfers or inter-funds.
4.8 million.
It was how much?
It was
4.8 million. Well, the 4.8 million was 4.8 million in and 4.5 million out, and we ended up debating $300,000 worth of impact fees. But it was all in how she had to account for it. So there's no easy way for us to answer your question. So we're going to bring a computer tomorrow, and y'all just flip the pages, and we'll answer till you get tired. Be glad to do so.
Is it too onerous to list those when you give us these lists? To
Yes.
list those funds in
Yes.
I think it would make it 3 times as thick.
Well, we could cut out some pictures.
No.
I knew that was coming.
Mr. Communication telling your story. No, sir. So it's not to be evasive. It's just there's no necessarily consistent answer. But in the spirit of open and transparency, we have absolutely nothing to hide. We'll just have to bring the information and look at it, because it's not as
That's
easy
not a
as.
problem. It's just the ones that are really huge. I just wanted to make sure I looked at what I was supposed to look at, or.
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be helpful if, like you said, travel and training, can we have just like some major categories that would be under other charges, and that might help? Because then if you are looking at
Okay.
the number and you know the department, you may be like, oh, well, that's got to be blah, 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 you
Yeah,
know?
other could just be so vague to, just a taxpayer. They're like, well, that's just under, she's out buying groceries. It's just, at least gives us some categories of these are what things could be under other.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all we're looking for.
We can certainly do that.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, anything else you want to add to the list?
Yeah, I'd really like to have well, let me preface it with this. The grant that the police chief found last year that was 100% funded for, I believe, an incident command vehicle, and I would like for us to at least have a policy discussion on how to pursue grants that may mitigate utilization of taxpayer funds or local taxpayer funds. I recognize that part of the policy discussion is how are we going to manage the grants and how those grants are going to be written, but there may be some resources that we can discuss from a policy level that we can utilize to assist us in pursuing grants and even writing grants. I'd like
So
to have
help
that
me with
discussion.
how that looks, because I don't know what to do with it. If we stumble upon a grant that we think we can win, we sign up for it. So we have to bring that to you. It requires a resolution for you to tell us we can apply for it. So we don't go do it without your blessing. So how do we need a policy beyond that so I know what to bring you?
I'd like to see if we have a policy to pursue grants to the greatest extent possible. I mean, there's notice of funding opportunities to come from the feds. If we do, I'd like
We'll
to
look
see
in
it.
the financial policy.
And
I think
if
it's referenced in the financial policy, but we'll find it tomorrow.
Good.
Speaking of the financial policy, is that approved when you approve the budget?
No, ma'am. On September 10th, as a part of your budget discussion, two things come to you and they're separate discussions. There'll be a work session item on the financial policy, and there'll be a work session item on the purchasing policy. And y'all tell us if you want to make any changes or not. If you don't, then we bring you back what you have. If you do, then we change it. And on September 27th, I think, which is when you adopt the budget, you adopt the purchasing policy separate, you adopt the financial policy separate, and y'all made a standing commitment that those were things that get evaluated every year.
So
they are included in your budget as reference, but they are not adopted by virtue of adopting the budget.
But the one that's in the budget says that it hasn't been reviewed since 2017.
That is because I didn't change the date that got put in there, but it got changed last year. Y'all adopted a new financial policy.
Okay, well, the budget we got last year had that date on it.
Yes, ma'am, I just didn't change it.
Oh.
That's what I'm telling you.
It's left over from last year.
Oh.
So she'll
We did not change the date on the adoption, but you adopted it last year.
So
You also,
2029, she'll update it and put in a 2018
we'll
date
get
on it.
we'll get the right date on it.
Well, it's carrying all of them, so you just
Yes,
need
ma'am.
to add one. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, does this body language mean anything down here? Y'all are still looking through those books, and we've got ours folded
Does that
up.
mean you don't have anything you want to add for tomorrow?
I've got a bunch to add, but it's all small stuff.
Okay. Small stuff. Councilmember Jackson, anything else you want to give staff a heads up for tomorrow?
After my discussion with the city manager this morning, I think I covered everything that I really needed to cover, and if anything happens overnight, I'll bring it, but nothing major at this point.
All right, then Councilmember Peterson, we are on item 4.
Great. Motion to adjourn.
It's 9:22, and we are adjourned. We will be back tomorrow at 6:30. Staff, thank you very much, and congratulations again, Chief Rosales. Just excellent.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
And we do need to get a press release out or get